Good afternoon, or actually good morning, sorry, and welcome to the Polk County School Board work session. We will now call the work session for April 14th, 2026 to order. Thank you to our staff who are available and accessible to help address any questions we have. As a board, we strive to work with you to ensure we achieve our mission to provide a high-quality education for all students. I would like to start by reading our Who Are We statement. We are the Polk County Leadership Governance Team. If we were to pick one phrase to define us, it would be student-centered. Because when we come together to work, we lean on our diverse backgrounds and experiences to ensure that our decisions are focused on providing a high-quality education for all students. The four most important things to our governance team are operating with integrity, respecting our students, staff, families, and each other, establishing a culture where our stakeholders feel valued, supported, and have opportunities for personal and professional growth, and supporting an approach of continuous improvement to ensure student outcomes. Collectively, we work on behalf of the children we serve and find avenues of agreement so that we can govern the district in an effective manner. There is no acceptable alternative. We will always collaborate in a respectful manner in order to enhance opportunities for each student and staff member. We will not disparage others. Our students will thrive because we will remain committed to supporting the whole child. We hope to engage and empower our students and stakeholders to create a community of lifelong learners. At this time, I would like to turn it over to Superintendent Hyde to lead us in our work session today.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Good morning to all of our staff. Thank you for all our visitors here today. So at this time, we'll go ahead and get started. And the first item before us today in our workshop is Dr. Annie Roberts Elementary School. And they are here to discuss the potential rebranding of their school logo and mascot. Good morning, Ms. Weingarth.
Good morning.
And Ms. Kengelis.
Good morning. Good morning, Chair Sharpless, board members, and Superintendent Hyde. My name is Dr. Amy Weingarth, and I'm the principal at Dr. Annie Roberts Elementary. I want to thank you for allowing me to be here this morning to share with you our proposal for a rebranding of our school logo. I do want to thank some people this morning, our leadership team at our school, as well as our school advisory council. They were a big part of this project. Also, I would like to thank Mrs. Kendrick. She's our previous regional, and Mrs. Cangelos, our current regional, for supporting our initiatives at our school. And also, I would like to thank the Public Relations Department. They have been huge in collaborating with us in this rebranding design. So I want to thank Jason Geary and his team. Mr. Garcia, Mr. Rivera, and Mr. Whaley have been phenomenal. So I want to give them a plug because they are doing great work in our Public Relations Department. So thank them very much. So we have a need for a new look at our school. Our school opened in 2002, and the current logo, as you can see, represents various colors. It was designed by a staff member years ago. Currently, we have several colors of shirts just through the years on our campus. So we do need a more modern design, a design that's colorful, that aims to represent our student body and our population. So I did reach out at last school year at the beginning in 2024 to our Public Relations Department team to talk about how we even go about rebranding for this school year, previous school year. So the rebranding effort began through a leadership team discussion with my leadership team. My leadership team was 100% on board to start the rebranding process. And then our SAC committee met in 2024 as well. And they were 100% on board. They were ready to go with the rebranding process. So we had that underway. And then after that, we moved back to the Public Relations Department, and they began their work and their process of rebranding. We're keeping our Roberts Rocket mascot, so we're still the Rockets, but we just need an upcoming fresh design. I was working on creating banners, and I wanted to get things made for our school, and I was coming into roadblocks because I had just a piece of clip art. So I'm really looking to really rebrand our school, take our Rocket logo, and just have a total fresh look on our campus. So for community feedback, after the logo was designed, our public relations department got back with me and my team. So we followed all the procedures and policies for the Polk County Public Schools rebranding toolkit, so that was all completed. And then we started looking at community feedback. So first, the survey was given to my staff, and then the survey was provided to our community and our families. And I made sure that I sent out every possible way to let them know that the survey was there, through Facebook, through social media. We did flyers with QR codes. I did a Connect Ed call. I also did a focused communications, and I pushed it out through there so that everybody could show and give us feedback on the logo. So after that, we had overwhelming support of positivity. So some of the things that we heard most in the comments were, this is fresh, this is modern, this is clean, this is a great look. We're super excited. We can't wait to see the product unveil on student shirts and so on and so forth. So some of the questions were, the first question was, how well does the proposed new logo represent Dr. Annie Roberts Elementary? So you can see that very well, somewhat well, neutral, not well at all, not at all, not very well. And you can see the percentages there. So we had in the about upper 80% for somewhat well and very well. Also, our community feedback, do you recommend Dr. Annie Roberts Elementary to adopt the proposed logo? We had yes, no, and I am unsure at this time. So yes was 83%, approximately 83%, and unsure was about 10%. So you can see that our community did really rally behind us with this new logo. So the overall response from our community feedback, we felt it was very confident. They were enthusiastic about it. They had a sense of pride. So a lot of families were excited when they typed in the comments, we can't wait to see the product. We're excited that this is happening on our campus. So the new logo really embodies empowerment for our students, aiming high, taking initiative in their work. It really captures and evokes the energy, enthusiasm on our campus. And it's bright and vibrant. As you can see the logo here, we have various colors that contrast, and the design is recognizable and it's very memorable, opposed to what we had in the past. So core beliefs, values, and vision of our school. We have our Roberts rockets, we soar. It symbolizes forward movement. It symbolizes limitless potential. It symbolizes that journey into the education of our students. It also really, the circular emblem focuses on that inclusion and togetherness of our staff and our students and our community as a whole. Also, it just symbolizes pride. We want our students to feel connected as a whole and our stakeholders, so we felt like this logo really does embody our campus. So as I said, where students launch into future success, we teach our students every day, growth is great, progress is wonderful, the momentum, setting high goals, being ambitious, and that is all our rocket, and it's soaring. So we're keeping our rocket, just making it fresh. So benefits of adopting our new logo, it does create school identity. It also builds excitement on our campus. It also promotes teamwork as well as just that positive can-do attitude. And then also it establishes a style guide. So you'll see in a few moments we're going to have various style guide colors. We'll have the font labeled. In years to come, this will be at our campus, and it's our brand. Future administrators, future students can look at this and move forward with it and buy products and things of that nature. So some things to consider with rebranding. We definitely are keeping our rocket mascot, so we're not changing that. There will be no site updates needed on our campus. No painting needs to be done. Families are not going to need to purchase anything. They're still able to wear their current shirts and or purchase the shirts that we currently have. This is just going to be a phase-in. So we're going to phase in new shirts onto our campus for our students, and that will be as the years progress. Some other considerations, our campus already has a strong blue presence. So you see some of our colors have the blue hues. Our marquee our roof lines, our exterior doors, our interior doors, all of our trim, everything is blue on our campus. So the red, white, and blue color palette, it associates with the rocket lifting into the sky. It creates that a sense of identity. It appeals to adults and children. The shirts look great for the children. It also will look great on a bag for the adults or a notebook. It does reflect the pride that we have on our campus, and also red, white, and blue are the official colors of the USA. So I want to share the style guide with you today. So our colors, primary and secondary colors, as well as our font, are listed for you to see. So you'll see the blue hues as well as toning in the red, and then our secondary will be the black and white. Here's some horizontal logo designs that we'll be able to utilize on our campus, and you can see there's color and there's the black and white. So we can utilize the black and white because we don't always use color when we're printing and things of that nature. There's also the vertical logos as well that our public relations team has designed for us. Here's some samples of just some ideas of things that we could probably possibly purchase for our campus. So there are flags, and you can see how it looks with the font and the color contrast. Also some examples of other items that we could potentially purchase for our campus. Oops, excuse me. There's some examples of shirts. So I love those. They look great. And I wanted to say, this is my second time going through the rebranding process with Polk County Public Schools because I was a principal at Highland City Elementary. So when our district first rolled out the rebranding process, I was one of the schools that was able to first do that over at Highland City Elementary as a principal. And now I'm doing it here with Dr. Annie Roberts. But I think it's such a valuable toolkit, and I think our district has done a phenomenal job, and Jason Gary and his team, with the rebranding process. So I did want to share that because it is very easy for a principal to pick up this toolkit and walk through the steps of what we need to do as a principal to rebrand our school, whether it be looking at a different logo or looking at a different mascot or changing things on your campus. So I did want to share that they have been a phenomenal team to work with, and their toolkit is amazing. So it's the second time I've been through it, and they work phenomenally with principals, so I did want to share that as well. Yeah.
Thank you.
You want to add?
And I just wanted to add, we really appreciate working with Dr. Annie Roberts. They were great to work with, and there were a lot of months and a lot of weeks of kind of getting back and getting feedback, but ultimately I think the end result is really, really well done. I also wanted to share that IDX, a Polk County-based company that specializes in custom branded merchandise, Ryan Delavaneri, the president of IDX, he's offering to donate a starter package of merchandise, custom merchandise featuring the new logo for them. The donation is completely free. It's only available to schools who successfully complete a rebrand and follow all of the official procedures of the district's rebranding procedures. IDX is making the donation possible because they believe in the importance of branding. They know good branding can really build positive school culture, which leads to student success. We greatly appreciate their support and partnership. Because Dr. Annie Roberts followed the rebranding process, they would be eligible for this generous donation. It includes 300 custom printed t-shirts, 1,000 pens, one step and repeat backdrop that's good for special events and also for as a photo backdrop, a customized table cover, and a polo and a tumbler for each staff member. Thank you.
Ms. Miller.
Thank you.
Hang on, Ms. Miller. Somehow you disappeared from the list. Hang on. Go ahead, Ms. Miller.
You might want to make me disappear sometimes. Thank you. I was a Roberts Rocket, not as a student, as a teacher, my very short-term teaching in 2003. That tells you I'm old. But I want to say thank you for this long explanation, which I think is great for the community to hear, as well as the phasing in process for parents who may feel like they need to run out and buy all these new shirts. They're not going to have to do that. That's a very generous offer from IDX, and we appreciate their partnership. My question, are there any other costs associated with these rebrandings?
No, I don't have any other costs associated with rebranding on my campus, so I don't know if the district would is.
Other than there's staff time, but that's in-house staff work, so no other expenses that I'm aware of.
And I know Dr. Annie Roberts was with us when I worked there, but I know he's no longer, but his family is still involved, so I'm sure they have seen this or received some kind of information on the new rebrand?
Yes, ma'am, they were. We provided them as well as Charlene Brinson. She's a very
That was my
much-
principal, yes.
Yes, ma'am. She's very much an active participant in our school, so they both have as well. And we will definitely provide them with some goodies to share
Okay.
with their family.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Dr. Allen?
Thank you, Superintendent. Good morning. This is.
Morning.
How are you?
Well, thank you.
All right. Thanks for the passion on this presentation. Pretty exciting, timely as well. You know, I've got all these images of the Artemis II in my mind right now, and I'm just thinking like 27,000 miles per hour. How can that thing travel so fast? But yeah, the process is so incredible, and you've done it twice, so thanks for giving that shout out as well. I do have a question for Jason as it relates to timeline and waiting list and things like that if we have. I was trying to look back. I know we made that policy adjustment, as you noted, as well. So the process is extremely thorough. You know, looking at it where it was to where it is, I mean, it's so much more modern, progressive. You went from like this serif-based font to a modern sans serif. The color's got a little pop to it. So great decisions for sure. So appreciate that work on that. So just those couple questions. Do we have a waiting list of schools that are looking to update and transition?
Yes, sir, we do. It takes anywhere from, on the low end, it would take maybe potentially 6 months to be able to do it, just because if you're going to do it thoughtfully, have multiple meetings, there's a logo committee of various folks who look at the design and decide whether it needs to go forward before we get community support. So there are multiple steps. So yes, there is a waiting list. We've done several since the procedures went in place, but obviously there are a lot more schools that would like to do it. We kind of work them through, especially the ones who, some might just want to refresh. They don't necessarily want to completely change, much like this one. There were a lot of things going for it. They didn't want to change the mascot. Really, it was the color scheme that was really a kind of the thing we had to focus on. But there are some schools that want to completely change a mascot. That's that is a much heavier lift, because you want to be able to make sure that if you're going to do something that's significant, you have the backing and the support of the community, and that it's the right thing to do.
Yeah. Yeah, I appreciate the work. I mean, it's a lifetime memory. I mean, the brand equity around this, even as Ms. Miller noted, her being a rocket. So thanks for the work. Appreciate the passion around this one. That's all I have, Superintendent.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Sharpless?
First, I just want to say thank you to IDX. Truly, that's an amazing opportunity, the donation. Appreciate that they are donating based on following our procedures and our rebranding. I think that's great. I was going to mention something about Artemis, but Dr. Allen already beat me to that one. But I will say this: it's very timely. The fact that we're changing to a red, white, and blue. This is America's 250th anniversary. I think rockets are even in our national anthem, right? And so I think it's very timely, and I think it's a great patriotic feel as well, and to hopefully maybe instill some patriotism in our students while they're there. So thank you for going through the rebranding process, and thank you to the team for supporting them.
Thank you.
Ms. Wyatt?
Thank you. My question kind of goes along the same line of Dr. Allen. So and this is for Jason. So we have a waiting list. Is it just first come, first serve, or do we look at the current state of their logos?
It's first come, first serve, with the caveat being, what does the work entail? If there's
Okay.
one that is a quicker one that we can turn around a lot faster, obviously, even if they were not necessarily next in line per se, it may be a smarter use of time to do that, because we can complete it faster. There's one school in particular right now. It's not going to be that difficult. Hopefully, if we are able to work with them during graduation season and continue to make progress, you hopefully would be able to see that one over the summer. So we're trying to get them done. It is a first come, first serve, at least in my mind, but at the same time, it's also which ones are a little easier to do so that we can move them faster. So that may bump somebody up.
Gotcha.
Makes sense?
I ask mainly because I don't know, we've seen several rebrandings. I don't know that we've seen a stronger case for needing a rebranding than the original clip art logo. I know. It was great in 2002.
It was really hard to try to buy things, like.
Yeah, well,
represent
that's
schools.
exactly.
So I had already went through it with Highland City, so I was like,
Anytime there's
We need to get
gradient
through
colors in a logo, we should probably look to rebrand, because gradients are just hard to do
Right.
really anything with. Even printing in black and white is hard with gradients. So that's really my question behind it. I just want to say thank you to the team, because we always get the data on how people voted, but we don't always get the comments. And I personally love reading through the comments, but I particularly love that some of the comments are, this was completed by this first grade class. This was completed by this second grade class. So I love that you were able to use it, I'm assuming probably in your lessons with some of your classes, and get them to truly vote on it, engage. And
I asked my teachers to, because it's there, it's the student's logo too. So I wanted my students to have a voice. So I definitely had the teachers in primary, they were the ones that sat with their students and said, okay, we're thinking about changing our logo. Do we like this? And so they completed it as a class.
well, I love that, because I think it's so important that we get that student feedback, and it is hard to capture when they're elementary, or even just to make them do it as an assignment. So I love that you were able to incorporate that. But it looks great. I'm excited to support it, and I'm assuming this will roll out for next school year,
That was the plan.
if approved.
Yes, if it's approved, that was the plan.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
Ms. Fields?
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
I love the new look. And the comment that Ms. Miller made was very impactful, where you're transitioning in and phasing it in because of parents not being able to sometimes afford to get new school wear. And I also like the idea that you all are communicating with Dr. Roberts' family. I know that his son is very active in the community. So I think that's a good thing. So thank you all for the excellent presentation, and we look forward to the new look.
There are no further questions or comments. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good job. Board members, the next item before you is the Berkeley Accelerated Contract Modification, so I will bring Ms. Amato forward.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay, so before you, you have the Berkeley Accelerated Contract Modification, looking for grade expansion. They are high performing. They're seeking to add not only grades 11 and 12, because they currently serve grades 6 through 8, or excuse me, 6 through 10. They also are looking to add a new elementary school in that area. As high performing, they do have the autonomy to expand grade levels. It's pretty simple.
Ms. Miller?
Thank you. This is District 7 in Auburndale, and I just want to thank the Berkeley Charter School, including Ms. Bolander, who brought me in, and we had this discussion before this was brought to us today, with them being high performing. I did not have to be included, but she's always been very collaborative in the efforts in Auburndale, because that is their community. They own every school, and they're very much interested in seeing all of the growth. So Berkeley will have that new campus. There's a lot going on in Auburndale the next few years with Polk schools, but we will intend to keep that relationship to work together to make sure everything is happening in Auburndale is for our bloodhounds. Thank you.
There are no further questions or comments. Thank you, Ms. Amato.
Thank you.
As always. Board members, the next item up for today's workshop is the proposed rule development for school board policies. Bring forward Ms. Teresa Griffin, Assistant Director for Policy and Public Records.
Good morning.
Good morning.
We have 16 policies before you today. These are going through the first step of rulemaking, and then they'll come back in June for public hearing. I should be bringing another batch to you guys, not the next work session, but the May 5th work session as well. All right, so the first two are actually board bylaws. The first one is 143.1, residence areas. And this is just revised to align with Florida statute. Ms. White, you may recall you brought this up to us a couple months ago. We took it to Neola, and they actually made the change and sent it out to all the districts. So now it just mirrors the language in the statute about the 270 days before a general election. And then bylaw 169.1, public participation at board meetings. This isn't necessarily a change in statute. They're just trying to make it more clear in our bylaw that presiding officers must first warn an individual before ordering their removal from a public meeting. So that's always been the case, but it's just trying to make it a little more clear in policy. Our next few policies are human resource related policies. The whistleblower protection policies, 1211, 3211, and 4211, are just revised to clarify that only certain reports are protected under the Florida Whistleblowers Act. And then policy 4120, employment of support staff, is revised to update various parent notice requirements under the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, and it removes the term highly qualified and replaces it with the actual state level requirements. Do we have any questions so far?
Dr. Allen?
Yeah, very minor, and this would be probably towards Mr. Green. In the whistleblower protection, there's just the minor language addition where it states upon receipt of and this was the additional language, legally sufficient report made by administrative staff. Any clarification on what that would mean? What is legally sufficient?
I'll defer.
But, and I don't need an answer right at this moment, but. My live? Do I need to press a button here?
Hang on, Mr. Green.
Sorry.
Yes, sir, your mic's hot.
I don't know if that came from the statute cited below. I'd have to see. My guess is those statutes maybe give some clarity as to that specific term. It might have been defined in the statute. I can loop back and see if that's where that came from and what that exactly means.
Right, yeah.
As opposed to this sort of general statement that is undefined.
Sure.
I can loop back with you and let you know if that's where it came from. Because it's an addition, right? That
Correct.
New language.
Yeah, before it just said upon receipt of a report, and now it's upon receipt of a legally sufficient report.
Okay.
Thank you, Superintendent. That's
Yes,
all I
sir.
have.
Ms. Wyatt?
For the public participation at board meetings, the line that was added about giving notice before removal, is that a verbal notice? And Mr. Green, this may be something for, is that we actually would have to say, last chance or you're being removed, or is that, because before it's been, sometimes it's the gavel repeatedly, things like that. Is there a,
We are on
listen, none of you have had underwear.
169.1.
Well, the way it actually
169.1.
reads,
And it's the,
that it must make it clear that the presiding
Towards the
officer
very
must
end of
first
the
warn an
policy.
individual
that
before
green?
ordering their removal, so that will be a verbal
So it has to be
warning.
verbal, okay.
And then the second time, it will be a direction for removal.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Ms. Miller?
Thank you. I have two. I'll start with that one with public participation. With that, the verbal warnings given, is there documentation other than video of the removal, or when that occurs, or is it just per meeting?
Ultimately, it would be determined based off the behavior of the individual.
Okay.
So the video would serve as evidence that the warning was issued, not the behavior warranted removal.
Okay.
Beyond that, any additional documentation ultimately could involve arrest or trespass. But again, that is to be determined based off the behavior of the individual involved. So that would be the only other documentation that would be available.
Thank you. Under the whistleblower protection, I would like to know how staff would be informed that those protections exist. Is that something HR does? I don't want unintentionally discourage someone from sharing information they feel is important to our department. So how is our staff informed of these things? Mr. Davis.
I can tell you that our staff are well-informed and know very, very well how to exercise their whistleblower rights, because that's something that I've handled myself. When I get those whistleblower complaints, I then inform them on what the law does and does not protect, and I help them walk through the process to make sure that they understand that, you'll be protected from retaliation. As we look into these matters, we will, keep you informed. But then anything that comes after that, as far as, if they talk about it with other people, we can't protect them from that. If it becomes a hostile work environment because, they're somehow trying to weaponize it. And that's what the law is really, the legally sufficient is really aiming at, trying to protect the process from being turned into some form of a, retaliation against supervisor. But they do know what that is. In fact, I dare say they don't fully understand it because they try to exercise it a lot, and then we have to explain to them what it actually is and what it isn't. Whistleblowers, it covers some protections, but it does not give you full, coverage to just start making allegations that are unfounded.
And you explain that to them in their initial?
I do, yes. And so far, we've had very good response from the employees. We take it very seriously. We want to make sure that we're doing the right thing, and I've not had any issues so far with it getting out of hand.
Thank you.
Ms. Wyatt?
Thank you. Along those lines with whistleblower and I'm glad that once people come to you that we're able to give them that education. There's still, from generations past, is a little bit of a holdover of, even if you say I'm not going to be retaliated against, what does that really look like, and can I prove that it's retaliation? Do we have anywhere that we explain the whistleblower process before they come to you, that they can read on it, whether it's a knowledge base or?
Yeah, it's in the policy. They can read the policy and
Okay.
go through it step by step. I will say some of my experience with whistleblower complaints has been someone who's already, having some workplace issues.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's kind of a last-ditch thing. So what they perceive as retaliation was really some accountability that was already taking place. So I understand that. I do work with supervisors and their supervisors to make sure everyone is on the same page. And I also explain to the whistleblower complainants that if they have any, if it's ever brought up, I tell everybody, you do not talk about this. If you talk about this, I can't protect you. And then if they hear from their supervisors, they report to me so I can look into it, make sure that the supervisors as well know that they are not to be talking about it, retaliating. So we follow up with their supervisors as well. We take that position that we have to ensure that they are not being retaliated against. We take that on ourselves.
Thank you. I think it would be helpful to have something that's, I love that we refer them back to policy, but our policy is not always the most English version of something easiest to understand, that if we have a document that they can find before coming to you, because I think several people that think, do I have a whistleblower complaint? They're worried if they even approach the issue to have that conversation, that they might be retaliated against, if that makes sense. So it would, just for what it's worth, it would be helpful, I think, to have that.
We are working on an employee handbook, and I'll be working on my legal FAQs. I'd be more than happy to include that as a topic.
That sounds great. Thank you so much.
There are no further questions or comments?
Okay. Moving.
Yeah.
You good?
I'm looking at the statute now just to clarify. So this is 112.3187. It doesn't define legally sufficient, but what it does say, it's the intent of the legislature to prevent agencies from taking retaliatory action against an employee who reports to an appropriate agency violations of law that create a substantial impact. It's further the intent of the legislature to prevent agencies from taking retaliatory action against a person who discloses information alleging improper use of government office, gross waste of funds, or any other abuse or gross neglect. So I think that's the legally sufficient part. Is there a violation of law, or is it this person, I don't like this person because they're mean to me? That doesn't rise to the level of a legally sufficient claim. It would have to be something within that part 2 of the statute, right?
Go ahead, Ms. Gray.
Okay. Moving on to policy 2266, which is our Title IX policy. And this is just revised based on the National Incident-Based Reporting System. The definition of fondling has changed to criminal sexual contact, so that's been changed in policy. Policy 2421 is our career and technical education policy, and it's revised to incorporate language from Florida Statute 1003.4203. It includes a new section related to digital materials and CAPE digital tool certificates and industry certifications. Policy 2450, our adult and community education policy, incorporates amendments to a Florida rule related to requirements for registering and enrolling students in adult general education and post-secondary CTE programs. Policy 3120.04, employment of substitute, short-term, and part-time instructional staff. This policy is being revised based on Neola's ongoing work and information obtained from Florida Department of Education. It includes the incorporation of language from Florida statute related to required qualifications of substitute teachers and required safety training and performance appraisals for those employees in that category. Policy 5330.01, which is our self-administered medication policy, and then policy 5780, student and parent rights. Both of those are being revised to add language related to epinephrine auto-injectors and our anaphylaxis policy. And that's just based on some amendments to a couple of Florida rules. And then additional revisions to policy 5780 include some updated statutory citations, as well as language modifications related to the New World scholarships and students with deficiencies in reading and math. Questions?
Hang on, Ms. Griffin. Ms. Miller?
Back to the substitute, the 3120. When it says performance appraisals, is that done by the district performance appraisals, or is that done by our third-party substitute company?
It's my understanding that's done by third party. I don't think I was looking to see if Mr. Warren or Ms. Kendrick were here, but
And we'll follow up with that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Sharpless?
Hello.
hi.
I I have a question on policies of 5330.01 as well as 5780 in reference to the epinephrine.
Yes.
EpiPens, so to speak. And so in there, in both policies, I notice there's a term there, and then we define that term a little bit. And I just want to,
Okay.
just walk with me for a second.
Yes.
So we talk about how each school serving students in kindergarten through 8th grade shall provide training to an adequate number of school personnel, right? An adequate. That term is up to,
Yes.
we have to figure out what adequate is. And so you define it a little bit later. It talks about adequate number of school personnel and contracted personnel identified for training. Each school site shall consider the following: the number of students with an individual health care plan, number of students who have experienced or are at risk of experiencing allergic reactions, including anaphylaxis, the accessibility of healthcare personnel at the school, and the number of trained persons needed to ensure coverage of areas. So I think it's a good definition. I'm just concerned that we're not capturing everything there, and I don't know what to add to make me feel more comfortable. I'm just thinking if there is, a significant number of students at the school that is allergic, how are we covering all areas of the campus at once? Again, I don't know if this is something for you guys to answer right now. I understand it's most likely coming from state statute, which I'm sure you can explain that. But I just have a little bit of hesitancy. Again, I think it's a good start. Maybe we might need to define it a little more. I'm not sure.
So I'm going to interject here. That would be done in procedure, not in policy. So the policy is ensuring that the board has adopted appropriate statutory language as it relates to these topics. Procedurally, you're deferring that to my office for implementation. My office is responsible for the implementation. So it should not
Yes,
be
sir.
defined in policy, is my recommendation. We will come back and define, based off specific criteria, how we will determine what an appropriate number of staff are. And quite frankly, the state should have helped us define that to begin with, rather than just passing the buck. So at the end of the day, we can provide you a procedural update.
I tend to agree with you, Superintendent, on that. The state probably should have been a little more on defining. Again, when it comes to procedure, I want to make sure that we're covering all areas of the campus, because I would hate for something bad to happen to one of our students. And I didn't know if maybe we need to have more guardrails in policy to help with that. But I will defer. Maybe I can get some comment from you both as well.
Sure, your angst is well placed because that was actually a big topic of conversation after that law passed. A bunch of us attorneys, when we were meeting, were discussing what is adequate, but that is exactly what the statute says. And to my knowledge, we've not received any guidance yet from the state on what that would mean. I'm sure they probably think that it would differ based on the school and based on the, you know, how large it is, how the population is. That is certainly something we'll take into consideration with procedures, because we want to make sure that we have enough staff to be able to handle the need. But yeah, when they put that in statute, we kind of are asking the exact same question. And right now, we don't have any additional clarification, but our policies, we tend to line up with statute to make sure we're in compliance with the state. But anything else, we can revisit with procedure, and we'll continue to speak with the state and see if they give us any guidance in the future.
Typically, you want these to reside in procedure because a policy change takes forever versus procedurally, I can make a change instantaneously. And then we would provide an update to the board that we've modified something. But, so that's part of the why there. It's really not, it's a partially a purview issue, and how do we separate the duties and responsibilities, but also how do we provide the greatest amount of flexibility based off new research, new information? Because should the state then come out with a better definition about how they defined an appropriate number of staff, even then we would have questions. So if let's just assume somebody came out and said, well, you need to train 30% of the staff. Well, arguably we would want to train more than that because of absenteeism, because of other issues. So we wouldn't want to be under that umbrella. So I would allow, if you would, the board would allow us to go ahead and work with Audrey Kelly and her team, and we can come up with some criteria about how we determine what an appropriate number of staff are. It will largely be grade dependent and needs dependent. So
I think it's a great plan. I just, policy's the guardrails, and then you guys work within the road there. So I just wanted to make sure our guardrails are where they need to be. And so it sounds like you have put sufficient thought into that. So thank you both.
Yes, sir. Ms. Wyatt.
Thank you. And just to add on to that, I appreciate keeping it with procedure, because every school, to your point, is very different. When you have a school like Inwood, where even I could throw a rock from one side to the other, it doesn't have the same needs as a Winter Haven High School that's expanding blocks of the city. So thank you for being able to take that on a campus-by-campus basis. The question I had was back on the substitute policy, the additional language that's being added about a minimum education level or equivalent, but potential substitutes with no prior teaching experience as determined by the district must complete an additional training program that includes classroom management and instructional strategies. Is that something that we already do?
We do.
And we're just codifying it? Okay.
Well, we do, but this is now being required, but we do that in partnership with our current substitute group. We take them through a number of trainings, including safety, obviously, and what to do under certain emergencies, and that can vary from district to district procedurally. So yes, we spend an inordinate amount of time. We also provide a great deal of instructional training as far as our curriculum materials and our lesson plans and those things. You may recall that we worked very closely with them in particular to ensure that they were following and adhering our district lesson plan and pacing guides for each grade level, each content area. And we provided those lessons too for a starting point. So we do quite a bit of training with them in collaboration with our provider.
Thank you. And in reading the policy updates, it sounded like things that we already do. So that's why it doesn't appear that there's anything new that we're not already doing. Is that your understanding as well?
I just think the statute, the legislature codified this and
Okay.
wants us to adopt it formally in a policy. We just happen to be proactively doing it. I think most districts do to a certain extent, especially when it comes to student safety, classroom management, because that's a mutually beneficial opportunity to ensure that those people can be successful.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Keys?
All right, thank you. Thank you to Ms. Miller. My first one was on 31-2004, and how do we measure that performance? So I'm anxious to hear on that. But the other one I had was kind of getting in the weeds a little bit on 5780. Under the subsection Educational Choice and Section E, there's the mention of the New World Scholarships. And my concern on this is that we took out a lot of language just to basically leave it the parent or student, kindergarten through K-5, may seek a scholarship. From what I understand, funding is no longer available for those scholarships. So I know they're maintaining it. They have to show use within that year to keep it. But for the policy to say may seek a scholarship when that scholarship isn't currently available, I'm a little concerned about that And like I said, I only know what I've read and what's readily available. But as my understanding is July 1st of last year, the funding was cut for that. And those no new scholarships are being administered for the New Worlds. Great program for reading and that, but I think that if it's not available, to say that they can seek a scholarship kind of throws us out a little bit.
From my understanding, the reason a lot of this was cut out and just to make it say may seek a scholarship in accordance with state law would be so that if the scholarship comes back, it's always going to coincide with the law. So we took out all of the other verbiage in there and it's just as with state law. So if it's there again, we have it in policy, parents can seek it according to state law. If the scholarship's gone, then
It makes sense what you're saying, Ms.
No,
Bird.
yeah.
When it caught me and said, okay, may seek a scholarship, they say, well, if you go out and seek it and it's not there, that was my only concern. But I understand what you're saying too, and that kind of makes sense. If it does come back, just in the nature of cuts that we're seeing, the likelihood, probably not. But I was just concerned about saying that something could happen and it actually can at this point. So
I think ultimately what would happen there, Mr. Vice Chair, would be a parent would then contact DOE and be directed to other scholarship opportunities that exist. So I think that's kind of a indirect reference for families, that should they reach out to apply, because I think it makes generic reference to may seek a scholarship in accordance with state law. There are a variety of student scholarships available, so I think that's what they intend there. If you'd like us to.
well, and the only I guess the only thing I would say is, does that subtitle section E, as it relates to say New Worlds, have to be redetermined as for, because New Worlds, there other scholarship opportunities may be available, but not the New World scholarships.
Yeah, we'll follow up with Neola just to make sure that there's not currently a statutory requirement that we include this specific language.
Okay.
Because as you pointed out, there are families who are currently under that scholarship. So it may be that we just come back with another policy revision next year when that expires, but we'll explore that.
Thank you.
Ms. Wyatt.
Thank you. Have you gotten through the full list yet, or do you?
no, I still have a couple
Okay,
more.
mine's on the last one, so
Yeah, I still have a few more if there's no more questions about these.
Go ahead.
Okay. Policy 5460 is our graduation requirement. It removes it removes all references to certificate of completions as they are being phased out. And as Florida and/or local school boards may expand the types of programs available to students, a reference to other state or board-approved programs is added to the commencement exercise section of the policy. Policy 8405 is our school safety and security policy. The revisions are the result of amendments to Florida rule and includes a new provision requiring the designation of primary and secondary threat management coordinators, and also that notice of their contact information will be sent to the Office of Safe Schools by August 1st of each year. And it also modifies the membership of threat management teams, including the addition of the Core 4. And these are our last two policies. Policy 8420, emergency management, emergency preparedness, and emergency response agencies. These are also being revised to incorporate amendments to Florida rule, and the revisions relate to open or unlocked gates or access points with access to an exclusive zone, requirements for instructional spaces for CTE programs that are designated as open areas, and then the FSAT documentation requirements. And then finally, policy 8470, which is our registered sexual predators and offenders policy. And this just removes the requirement that schools maintain like a physical binder of offenders. And now schools can just direct parents or whomever to the FDLE website where this information is housed.
Ms. Wyatt.
thank you. We don't often take time to say thank you to our delegation when they do clarify things for us and make it make sense. But so I want to take the opportunity just to thank our delegation for the updates that we can make to policy 8420, because while the school safety laws that have come down have been great, some of them we've realized when we're trying to do, some of our campuses have a full body shop so that they can teach automotives. Keeping a garage door shut when you're working on automotives can be very dangerous. So I just want to say thank you to our delegation who's helped us clean up some of those things so that we can still keep kids safe, but do it in a common sense approach to make sure that they're still getting the opportunities that they deserve to receive. And then on 8470, I just want to say thank you for getting rid of binders and paper. But I also think it's a great opportunity just as we look at creating policies to make sure we're looking at it with that lens of as technology changes, are we hamstringing ourselves in that we're specifically saying how it has to be stored, especially if the law doesn't? Because I do think we get caught up often, at least I know I do, of making sure that we're creating a policy for today when 15 years ago it was a great idea to keep everything in binders, but how long have we been holding on to that shelf space that it can be online? So thank you so much.
Mr. Sharpless?
I want to reiterate Board Member Wyatt's comment, and then a little something. I have a question. So I remember a while back when we're looking at a policy and we were referencing specific social medias, and we had Twitter on there, and we had to update it to X and everything. So yeah, the more vague we can be on some of those kind of things, the better. I have a question about 8470.
Okay.
First, I understand we're getting rid of the binder because we don't legally have to have it anymore. However, some of our families have lacked access to technology, and so I'm just curious how are we allowing, or how are we going to help them have access to this important information on registered sexual predators if they lack the technology to be able to go and look at the website? Are we offering that? And this will be more procedurally, I think. It's not a policy question, it's more procedure. So Superintendent Hyde, feel free to jump in here. But are we offering technology at the school site? Or are we offering some sort of other, we're deleting the requirement. Are we still going to have them in there? Or I'm just curious if you could help me to understand that.
I can't speak to, I'm not sure if schools will allow access, like computer access for parents to look that up.
We would not.
Right. I'm not sure.
I'm, to the extent, so between cell phone access, web-based phones, and other utilities, if a family came to us and shared that they had a deficit in that regard, I think we would. I'd have to check with IT to see if student-issued devices would be able to access that site. Okay. If they are, a family could use that at home through our protected filter and Wi-Fi network. We'd have to explore that, but at the end of the day, it hasn't presented as a problem to date, but nor is the use of the notebook ever been.
I want to be clear. I am not advocating that we put the
No. I know you're not.
But I'm just
trying to figure out where the need is.
I'm just thinking if there's a parent, if there's a parent that comes in and says, hey, I would like to have access to this information. I think it's very important information, right? And they don't have access to that technology because there's pockets of our communities that don't. And again, it may not be a huge need. I just wanted to ask the question.
In all honesty, I think that would actually become a conversation between the administrator and the parent, and they could take them into their office and they could explore that. They could work with the school guardian or SRO. We could connect them with somebody from Safe Schools if need be. We could direct them to a public library where they would have access. Ultimately, I just think it's informing our administrators, if you're presented with this problem, here's how you'd address it. Because in that same scenario, how do I communicate that to the parent ahead of time? Typically, we do it through email, ConnectEd, those types of things. But if they don't have that technology, then how then do I make sure that they're even informed that there are other processes and steps? So based off our retreat conversation about communication, give us a little bit of time to work through that. But I think the solution is making sure that the parent or guardian can directly communicate with the school, because that's where their primary concerns are going to be anyways, right? The potential exposure of a child within the community or within the school setting. So probably best addressed that way, but let me work with Safe Schools and the team and we can come up with a formal written response to the board.
Thank you, Superintendent.
Yes, sir. Ms. Griffin, I see no further questions or comments.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you. Board members, this is an update for you on the Alta Vista K-8 rezoning recommendation. Board members, this has been discussed with you previously. I believe we've already reached some level of consensus around here this, but we did provide opportunities for continued community feedback. In this case, you're getting the update from the team post-town hall. And I believe Mr. McLemore will share that information with you just now. Go ahead, Mr. McLemore.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board, Superintendent Hyde.
Morning.
This is being consistent with how the district has proceeded with rezoning opportunities. We always conduct town halls to collect community feedback and input based off the various options that the attendance boundary committee reviews and considers. We never want to make a decision in a vacuum. We want to hear all sides to the coin, so to speak. So staff did execute and conduct a town hall at Alta Vista K-8 on site on February 18th. And I have to extend my appreciation, sincere thanks to Mr. Cummings and his entire team out there. They were absolutely phenomenal. We're grateful for their support. But to that point, we utilize the same marketing methodology we use with the comprehensive high school rezoning efforts, trying to put it out on newsletters, using the school's website page, and Mr. Cummings, to his credit, make sure he pushed that message to his students as well. Saying all that, we did not have anybody attend the town hall meeting.
But we did.
Well, there was a staff member who was already there at the site working. It's one of the custodial members who has a grandchild present at that school, and we discussed the rezoning and what the whole purpose was there, and they liked and appreciated the recommended option. But outside of that,
But keep in mind, for clarification, and this is not just for you, this is for our audience members who may be shocked that only one person attended. And while she is an employee, she's still a grandparent and potential guardian to one of those students. There had been considerable amounts of communication and town hall meetings involving myself, staff, with that community, with staff, for multiple months. And I believe that the principal has done a very good job at communicating these things. Prior to this meeting, this was not just communicated to existing parents. This was communicated by virtue of all of the feeder pattern principals at all of the other schools as well. So it was well advertised, well noticed. I think what happened here in this particular case was it's more of an example that we had been communicating all along more efficiently and effectively, that we didn't necessarily have any concerns or pushback as it relates to this. Because as you all may recall, and I believe at least one board member was in attendance at the Alta Vista Town Hall at their previous site, and it was so well received that when we offered the opportunity to relocate, the only question they had repeatedly was, why do we have to wait till the end of the year? Why can't we move right now? Well, because we have another school there right now. So it was, I think it was well done. So I didn't want Mr. McLemore and the team not getting the credit for their efforts to communicate and convey this to our stakeholders. But I think it was a job well done. Go ahead, Mr. McLemore.
so to just wrap this up then, so this matter will be brought back before you, as with all rezone matters. These require two public board meetings. The first board meeting is tentatively scheduled for April 28th. And during that one is more of a public opportunity for comment. No action would be sought from the board at that time. But the second action/adoption meeting is tentatively scheduled for June. We have to make sure we have at least 30 days between the board meetings before an actual action is adopted. So in the notes, it references May 5th. However, that doesn't give us a 30-day requirement between the two, so it'll actually be in June when the second and final adoption hearing will be. So pending your questions.
Okay, Mr. Keys.
So I want to just echo what the superintendent has already said, Mr. McWard and your team. Thank you for your communication there, and I think we hit the nail on the head. I think the response was so positive when we decided to utilize that campus for Alta Vista. Everybody was really excited, and that's probably the lack of participation there. This is more of just a question for knowledge-wise. I know that we have not as many as Haines City Senior High School, but at Boone Middle, a plethora of portables, which I know that some board members absolutely love. That being said, do we know what the real number is of relief as far as students go when Alta Vista K-8 is fully, I know this year they took 6th grade and the plans are 7th grade and 8th grade in the subsequent years, what the relief will be numbers-wise to Boone? Because with, I think, the last utilization record I had showed 21 portals with Boone, right? I've been out there. It's a city unto itself. And I'm wondering what the real numbers are of relief to Boone will be.
Let me go back to my office and get you that exact number. but we'll follow up with you and get you that exact number.
Yeah, we just reviewed this the other day, in fact, so we'll provide that, the summary responses to the board today.
Okay, yeah, because I know that when I went out there, I guess, coming into the role, and I went to Boone Middle School, and it wasn't like that when I was there. Obviously, that was some time ago. As somebody had mentioned, another board member won't mention their name, that we're getting old. But and seeing that, I thought I was just astonished at not only the distance that students have to travel to go out there, but the enormity of what happened. And we're talking about there's no sidewalks. It's just dirt walking out there, and just if I was a student and that was where I had to be housed during the day, it's kind of, affects morale a little bit. So I'm excited when we said, hey, we're utilizing now the formerly Scenic Terrace campus to do that. Wondering what that relief is going to be, and then obviously in our capital outlay going forward, plans for that area. But appreciate the work you're doing, and like I said, the community output, at least from what I've heard, that being the board member that represents that district, has been absolutely phenomenal. And again, and kudos to your team, but also you hit the nail on the head too. Mr. Cummings is absolutely fantastic and a good support to the community, and we're glad to have him there.
So the one thing to keep in mind, Mr. Keys and board members, when we provide you that data, it's a 3-year phase-in for the impact, because we're allowing families to choice, so they can stay where they're at. We don't do a forced reassignment. So I just want to make sure that was reiterated here. Ms. Fields.
I just had comments about no one attending except for one person. And Superintendent Hyde, this is just my thoughts, for whatever it's worth. Have we considered maybe doing some type of survey and finding out why there was no interest from the community? Because that's a lot of time and energy that the staff take to prepare and then show up, and one person present. One person is good. It's better than no person. But I'm just saying.
We could put something out, have Mr. Cummings put something out and ask if, we'd have to work carefully on the wording for the survey so it's not leading people to a response. But again, I think the simple explanation is we've been meeting with that community of stakeholders for 6-7 months repeatedly. Multiple meetings and town halls were held. The first few meetings were standing room only, with parents in particular at their previous site, because I was in attendance there and spoke. So I think that's part of it, but we'd be happy to see, and we can ask our principals as well to see if we know why we may not have had more attendance.
And that might help us for future purposes as well. If we don't need to have those meetings, then we don't need to have them.
Certainly. Dr. Allen?
Thank you, Superintendent. Going back to your statement around the phase-in, so I was, in the numbers that's presented, I think on the second slide, yeah, right there. So are those future projections? It's not current enrollment, right? So what is the current enrollment now of that school site?
I don't have this week's current enrollment data, but I can follow up and I'll get you the exact enrollment figure for you.
Mm-hmm. Do we have an idea, so within this phase-in, how many, or how long is it going to take to get to that projection that we're seeing up there?
It's going to take, because we're adding 1 year at a time, at least 3 years.
Mm-hmm. And no ballpark figure on what the current enrollment is?
I don't have that
No.
enrollment table with me right now, sir.
Okay.
I'll get it to you.
All right, great, thank you. That's all I have.
There are no further questions or comments. Thank you. Go ahead, Mr. McLemore.
Good morning again, Mr. Chair, members of the board, Superintendent Hyde. This next matter that staff's bringing before you is we are seeking an amendment to the charge sheet for the half-penny sales tax committee. Specifically, we're wanting to revise some of the language that really stipulated the restrictions on how many terms committee members may serve on this committee. From both our staff's observations, we realize it is sometimes challenging to identify individuals who are willing to volunteer their time and serve on these committees. And when we do find them, it's sad for us to see them leave, and sometimes it's hard to find replacements for them. So what we are seeking to propose here is that we amend and remove the language that limited committee members to only serving 2 terms on the committee itself, and replacing that with pretty much they can be reappointed for additional terms at the pleasure of the school board itself. Pending your questions.
Before I go to questions, Dr. Allen, the current enrollment at that school is 991 students. Yes, sir. Mr. Sharpless.
I just want to say first, the half-cent sales tax committee does a really, really important job of keeping us accountable to the community for the half-cent sales tax that they approved, the voters approved for us. I will tell you, sometimes appointing someone on there, it gets hard because if they're not consistent in showing up, then that's not the full community participation. So if you have someone that is very interested, that is showing up, that's engaged, it's important to have them on the committee. And this doesn't mean that they have a lifetime appointment. They still only have their term, right? And the board member can reappoint that at that point, or they can appoint someone else, right? And so this just gives them the option to do that, because currently we don't have the option to do that. Basically, oh, you served your time, you're done, you can't be on the committee, right? So I definitely agree with this change to the charge sheet. And I look forward to eventually voting on that. So thank you for thinking through this process, Josh.
Mr. Keys?
I'm happy to see these things come about as we try to streamline the way our committees look overall and try to get some, uniformity across. And to Mr. Sharpless, we were saying, it is important that we identify the need to let those folks continue to serve, because actually in the charge sheet, you'll see down there, it says a minimum requirement of 80%. It's a very important committee. So I think those people that do show up, we want them to keep showing up if they're willing to. And speaking to that comment about a lifetime appointment, what happens usually with those that are love to serve, they end up on the school board through committees. I think there's a couple that could attest to that. But again, those people can also change as new school board members come about. But I think that we did a very good job there saying, hey, we're limiting our ability to place qualified individuals who are willing to serve on those committees. So I was happy to see this.
Ms. Miller?
Thank you. We've done this with other committees that we have to find people to serve on. I do want to say I think that we have been proactive in trying to engage the members there. I think membership and attendance had a lot to do with the value that people felt and what those meetings meant. I hope that our citizens feel that it's valuable, because it's very important to have them a part of those discussions. I think this is a positive thing that we're doing, because I do know trying to find people to commit to serve to drive to Bartow from North Lakeland and Auburndale isn't always convenient. And we have some great people. I had someone else on the audit committee yesterday that's serving again because he just enjoys doing it. So I think we should do that, but we should also always look at how they're being engaged in those meetings so they feel valued. I think once they commit, they do that with good intent, and then sometimes we do have them drop off because they just feel that maybe it's not as meaningful as they thought it would be, or the experience is wasn't what they thought it would be. So I appreciate you looking at those committees to make them engaging.
And to your point, that's why we try to think, and we try to always plan ahead an off-site meeting to be held at a project site that was actually funded through the half-penny sales tax. So last year, we actually held a committee meeting at Elbert Elementary.
Ms. Fields?
Thank you. I agree with the idea of allowing members that are actually wanting to be on the committee to continue. Typically, it's a 2-3 year term, not one. So having an option for them to do additional time, I think is great, but making sure that when they become stagnant and when they aren't attending meetings, that they are asked if they still want to serve, and if not, then finding someone who does.
Ms. Wyatt?
Thank you. I know a former committee chair that's going to be very excited about this revision. But to everyone else's point, when you find someone that's passionate and wants to serve, I'm excited to be able to give them that opportunity. And I just want to thank you for making it a true reappointment. It's not we've had several contracts that we've been trying to get things out of that it doesn't automatically renew. So their terms do not automatically renew it, even if we want them to serve again, it has to come to a board meeting and for them to be reappointed, which I know you will give us the nod when we have to do those things. But I did want to ask, because I know we recently updated. We went through kind of a weeding process to make sure that the people on the committee were people that actually wanted to serve, have gotten some new faces in there. But we've also made sure that the meetings are scheduled and on people's calendars. Have we had a better attendance, or are we still working on that?
Yes, we actually have.
Okay.
Yeah, compared to a year ago, yes, we've had far more attendance.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Dr. Allen?
Yeah, I'll just add to that. I see faces out in the audience that actually serve on that committee, so appreciate your service. And just being at the last meeting, I think I overheard someone say this was like one of the best meetings we've had in a long time. So appreciate the work and just the allowance of, the ebb and flow and the rubbing of, different ideas. And I thought it was, very thorough, good process. Wondering in this discussion, I know with the FSBA, as we're looking at various committees within that state organization, we're considering our term limits, right? From 12 years to 8 years. So, and maybe this is a question for a superintendent, but as we look at these charge sheets, how does it work? I know we don't have anything in these charge sheets as it relates to, the expiration of our term, in a sense. And, just because we have a different ebb and flow, it's not like a hard start for our committee appointees. So just something to consider moving forward. So if I appoint somebody, let's just say in my last 6 weeks of my term, and I've appointed them for 3 years, and then somebody comes to take my seat, does that appointee stay?
They do.
Mm-hmm. Right. So has that been an issue in the past? But just as a point of discussion, right? So I know for me, when I came in 2020, I reached out to all the members who were appointed previously just to ask if they wanted to maintain that appointment and so forth for the goodwill of that. But just wondering if this has been a part of the discussion as we look at these charge sheets.
It has not. And historically, it's not been an issue. Board members do a very good job of ensuring that whoever they're going to nominate for a position on those committees have served well and within the constraints outlined in the charter. Should someone operate outside of those, then they could be removed. There's nothing that prevents us from removing a member, especially for good cause. Lack of attendance, lack of preparation, lack of those types of things, they could be removed. But to date, in 12 years, in my current role, 5 here, I've never had that come up as an issue. Mm-hmm. Again, I think that's simply because the board members do their due diligence to assign someone or ask someone to serve in that capacity who has a sincere interest and is willing to commit themselves in service, as Mr. Keys pointed out earlier. So, but if that's something that the board would like to pursue, as far as we'd have to amend the charter to say that within the last year of a board member's term, they can't appoint someone, or we would restrict that appointee to serve for the same duration of the board member. I'll leave that to the board. And if board members want to provide some direction that you'd like to see some options there, we could explore that. But I don't know. Again, we've not had an issue with it, but if that's a concern, happy to see if we can address that.
All right. Thank you.
Ms. Miller.
Thank you. I appreciate that question, Dr. Allen. I think in the past it's worked well only because I don't want to make those appointments political at all. Like, I don't want to remove somebody because someone else comes into office. That's very, that just brings another element that may discourage people from wanting to do it. I had some people appointed when I arrived from Mr. Harris, and they were, I contacted them, and then I contacted the chair of the committee, and they were good members, and they were very well-versed, and I didn't want to upset, I would never want to upset what they had going in the committee. So I understand that coming in new probably would be a question of who was appointed, but I think the way we do it keeps it more servant leadership. So I haven't thought of that before, but I do appreciate you bringing it up.
Ms. Fields.
Thank you. I've never known that to be an issue, Dr. Allen. I think that when people agree to serve, it doesn't matter what board member asks them to serve. They are serving to better the students and the school system. So I would think that if there's an issue as it progresses with the new board member, that would be something that that person could deal with behind the scene. But I think that the way that it's done now has worked well.
Seeing no further questions or comments, thank you. Board members, the next item that we have before us is the employee evaluation system support. We'll wait for the room to clear. Thank you all very much for joining us today. And we hope that you're all excited to run for school board seats in the future. Thank you, Mr. Barron. Appreciate it. Board members, we did provide a challenge coin for each one of the members who are here today. Had only been an hour, but if you'd like to, we can. We can. I'm trying to go as quick as I can because you have a hard out at noon. So, all right. For the room, Mr. Chair, there's been a request for a short break. So we will, if you could, sir, if we could do that after this presentation, that gives the technology team enough time to prepare to take us offline. And then, Mr. Chair, if you would, is 15 minutes sufficient? Okay. No problem. All right. So, board members, this is a follow-up to a conversation and a presentation that occurred a couple months back, but we wanted to go ahead and address some of the questions that were provided at that time. And so I'm very happy to have Ms. Smith and Ms. Rouse here to do this presentation for us today on employee centralized evaluation team. As you know, evaluation instruments come up very frequently, and making sure that evaluations truly reflect the duties and responsibilities of our employees rather than a generic kind of generalist approach. That becomes very difficult for employees, and the board themselves have faced this situation with a generic evaluation instrument. So that being said, I'll turn it over. Thank you, ladies, for being here.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, board members, and good morning, Superintendent. Previously, we shared the complexity of our employee evaluation process and the strain it creates by managing it as a secondary responsibility and the operational risks of having fragmented ownership over that system. We discussed that we want to focus on transparency for our employees, building capacity among evaluators, and ensuring the evaluation system is fair, defensible, and consistent across all divisions and departments. So we took the board's feedback and questions, and today we will provide an overview of the information requested as well as plans for next steps. So the purpose of a centralized evaluation team is to ensure a legally required district-wide system is implemented with consistency, fairness, and integrity. By centralizing our evaluation system under HR, we create ownership for compliance, training, calibration, data integrity, and leadership reporting, and therefore ensuring that existing standards are applied uniformly across schools and district departments, hopefully reducing operational risk by strengthening our guidance, our timelines, and our quality assurances through ongoing training and calibration.
So last time we were able to speak with you, we appreciated the recommendations to go and look at Houston, Charlotte, and Chicago, to see what they did for their evaluation systems, to see what success may look like in those districts compared to what we were proposing. However, when we did that research, what we found was that there were so many comparisons that were different outside of their systems and ours. It was hard to make that crosswalk. So one is the contextual differences really made it hard to directly replicate one system from one area or state to another area or state. We found no direct evidence or causal links between evaluation systems and student achievement, but what we found over and over was the connection between professional growth and retention between evaluation systems and that data. So as in the professional development world or professional growth world, it's really difficult to do a direct link to, because we learned this, students were able to do this. There's so many things that happen in between, but what we could direct was a link between professional growth and staff retention. So we also found, in looking at all the research of these areas in our own districts in the state, is that they don't share a lot of this information publicly on their public-facing pages. So what we did find was, though, that they were best understood as supporting conditions for growth and retention. So with that, we said, okay, well, what would success look like in Polk? And I believe, Dr. Allen, that was your specific question last time. What would success look like? So under evaluation systems that influence conditions for educators, we found that there's consistent high-quality feedback that the staff can trust. They can act on that. There's improved inter-rater reliability across schools and supervisors across the district departments. There's a fair and transparent experience for all employees. There's stronger retention of teachers and reduced avoidable turnover. And then, of course, that results in greater staffing stability, especially in high-needs schools and roles. And so we were able to link that research there, and you can see our reference in the bottom corner. So to us, success in Polk County would be us being able to show evidence of these indicators.
So we continued our deep dive on surrounding and like districts, and we were able to find more information from, we had a conversation with Pinellas County. We went through a great deal of effort and an epic phone tag round and still have no data from Miami-Dade, but we did try. However, what we found overall in our research, each district really organizes their evaluation system a bit differently. However, the common thread was that they treat it as a centralized function with a dedicated ownership. It's not that fragmented ownership. Okay, what we're looking at here is 2 years of data from a snapshot of district-based supervisor and professional staff evaluation groups. So that top section that's in sort of the light green is from 23-24. The bottom section in the darker green is from 24-25. So you're looking at, in that first column of numbers, that's the total number of employees that reside in that evaluation group. The next column is the number of those employees that had a finalized evaluation. The next column, those employees had evaluations started but not finalized. And that last column there is the number of employees that were eligible for an evaluation but no evaluation was started for them. So what's important is when evaluation lacks centralization, oversight, completion does become inconsistent. And we need to remember that these are not just data points. These represent employees who did not receive formal feedback. And over time, that can erode trust in our overall system. And it creates inconsistencies in how expectations are communicated and recorded. This obviously will lead to frustration, especially for our employees that are looking for growth and they're not sure what next steps to take.
So in preparation for the Summer Leadership Academy, we're going to have learning sessions this year for our executive staff that we haven't had before on the operations side, which we're really excited about. So we sent them a survey and said, what topics would you like to see at the Leadership Academy to learn more about to help you with your leadership? And what was incredible is the top results were around, they wanted action planning and monitoring. They wanted strategies for promoting a positive work environment, and they wanted support and coaching and feedback for their employees. And what's nice is when you have a strong employee evaluation system, You can accomplish all of those through that system. Of course, you need to layer things with it. But through the evaluation cycle, when it's done with Fidelity, you are action planning and monitoring with your employees. That trust, that relationship, that open feedback and growth opportunities promotes that positive work environment, those conditions for that. And there's quality coaching and feedback. So having a dedicated centralized team would really focus on the professional learning around that quality cycle. And that would help meet a lot of the needs that our executive administrators are asking for. So the district plans to centralize this evaluation team through these three roles. A director who would be the ultimate leader of the strategy. They would ensure the compliance, be the liaison between all the different departments and the leaders around school and district positions and areas. There would be 2 senior coordinators, one that would be the lead, so to say the lead, they would all share in it, but the lead for evaluator training, which is a huge, heavy lift. We're always onboarding new administrators and evaluators that need really deep support. They would work on feedback quality, continuous improvement, and then the other senior coordinator would be the lead for all of the management pieces around the creation of the timelines from year to year for all the different employee groups and systems, the reporting of the data for that data integrity, and doing audits along the way to ensure we're meeting our benchmarks and seeing success. So this centralized team would pour their efforts into doing that with direct ownership to increase our system. So with that, we just appreciate the opportunity to come back and share this information with you, and we are very confident that the plan will help strengthen the district systems for our employees.
There are no questions or comments.
Thank you. Or maybe there's one.
They didn't push the button.
I was looking at the research that was shared, so I appreciate the hyperlink in the very bottom, and it looks pretty intriguing. So, and the fact that it was a meta-analysis really intrigued me as well. Just for sake of clarity and for our general public, the evaluation types, those acronyms that are listed,
Oh, yes.
just some clarity on those.
Absolutely. So when you see IPT, that's instructional, professional, technical. So those are typically like coordinators, senior coordinators on the instructional side of the house at the district level. ISP are the supervisors within that instructional area. The NIP are non-instructional, professional, technical. So your coordinators and above who are more on the operations side. NISP are the non-instructional supervisors. And then, of course, nutrition. So this is just one snapshot of some district-based positions and employee groups, not looking at data in other groups, because honestly, our schools have, better implementation and rates there because they're held accountable more where you have to report that to the state annually. So we just need stronger systems for all of our employees, not just our school staff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I appreciate the data on the not finalized. I mean, nearly 28% seems pretty high.
Right.
And then anything that would be a double digit, I don't know what the ebb and flow would that be over like a 5-year period, but I appreciate we're looking at it over a 2-year time period as well. And then in the three and in the proposal of the 3 positions, was there any type of ratio that you were considering? Because obviously you're looking at the staff models, you've got anywhere from 8 roles, or, 8 positions to 2 positions. I know Polk's sort of in between, so was there a ratio that you looked at just to determine the 3 roles?
Yes, so when we looked at that chart from the comparable districts, although we're a little bit larger than Lee, Pinellas, and Pasco, and Duval there, but which, are we bigger than Duval? That's
Employee count.
Employee count, yeah. We thought it would be reasonable, and we weren't asking too much to ask for 3 positions to see, what could the workload look like and be manageable for those 3. Over time, if we needed to grow that, we would come back to the board, but we're confident and very happy to have a team of 3 to make some really huge improvements.
Yeah. All right.
Yes.
Yeah, great, thanks. Thanks
you.
for the presentation.
Thank you, Dr. Allen, for affirming their work and asking a good question. To the team, they've done a great job, and they were really interested in doing the presentation today, because you had asked, the board had asked multiple questions last time this was presented, so they wanted to be very intentional and bring back the data for you. So, Mr. Chair, as requested, and hopefully the IT team in the back took note, at this time, sir, it is exactly 10:30. We will come back at 10:45.
10:45. We have a recess.
Thank you, sir.
At this time, I would like to call this meeting back to order and turn it over to Superintendent Hyde to finish leading off our work session today.
The next item, Mr. Chair, members of the board, is a discussion about policy 0147. Unfortunately, the policy title is called compensation, but the discussion today, which is going to be led by Mr. Green, is specific to membership dues and fees and things of that nature. So, Mr. Green.
Thank you, Mr. Superintendent. So I want to walk you through this. I'll tee up the issue for you, and I'm going to just kind of walk through what the goal is today. So first, under policy 0131, the board may hold workshops for the purpose of policy development. That's what we're trying to do today. The threshold question for consideration is whether their board desires the district to develop a proposal to amend 0147. Specifically, the first sentence of the second paragraph, which says the board may authorize all approved expenses for membership of its board members in recognized school board associations. I believe the two recognized school board associations in Florida are FSBA and Leadership Florida. So if the board does wish to pursue a amendment, then under 0147, the district can move forward at a future meeting at which the superintendent would recommend for the board's consideration revisions to that policy. Before leaving to the board for discussion, I can provide a brief statutory analysis for the board's consideration of this issue if you wish. So if you look at 0147, it cites one statute, 1001-395, and that's specific, and the title of the policy is compensation. That statute is specific to compensation. The statute, unfortunately, does not address anything about membership or expenses for membership in associations. So to try to figure out, well, what might be permitted if the board were to consider an amendment, I looked at a statute in Florida. It's 216.345. The title is Professional or Other Organization Membership Dues. That specific statute is limited by its language to state agency. So it says a state agency or other component of state government, here's the key phrase, may utilize state funds for the purpose of paying dues for membership in a professional or other organization only when such membership is essential to the statutory duties and responsibilities of the state agency. I looked at, has any Florida court interpreted that statute? Only once since the statute was first passed, I think 1995. There's a case from 2011 where the court interpreted that statute and basically said the statute allows use of state funds for membership dues only when such membership is essential to the statutory duties and responsibilities, basically citing the statute. So while that specific statute doesn't say anything about local agencies or school boards explicitly, it does say that those particular agencies may utilize state funds only when membership is essential for their duties. So you could find that persuasive perhaps that, to the extent that a school board or local agency is utilizing state funds, that same standard might apply if there was a case that brought before a court. So that's my briefing. I want to just tee this up, and I'll turn it over for the board for discussion.
This is your item, correct? It's on your agenda? So.
It's on my agenda, but Mr. Green was the presenter.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Ms. Miller.
Thanks, Mr. Green. I did send you Hillsborough's policy, and I think you had time to review that. The local chambers have been paid differently in the past through the district. I know I called around to find out our status. with several of the chambers. In Auburndale, there's still single memberships where all my schools join, and I join separately. In Lakeland, we're at a tiered system. Right now, I'm going to meet with them to see what they'll offer for another tier. District 2 used to be a member, but I think just we've moved along with the in-kind of just being a part of the city and community. We've just not had a system. I'm not opposed to paying the chamber memberships out of our budgets because I think what I get from meeting with the business community is very valuable. And so I do think we should update this because there are lots of organizations that I think are pertinent to this job, and most of them are right here locally, what we can do locally. I was just with Leadership Bartow and toured a business that now our medical academies are going to go see. I think we've had a lot of opportunities to make those local connections as board members through the chambers. I love that our chambers are so inclusive. Like if I go out to the Northeast Chamber, they don't ask for a membership card. They're very welcoming to any of the members, as well as Lakeland and Winter Haven and Auburndale. They're all really good at that. So I think it's important that we're seen. I think it's important that we listen and make those connections. And I don't have an opinion on where the line item comes from. I just think it's important that we're involved at that level. Thank you.
Ms. Wyatt?
Thank you. I would tend to agree with Ms. Miller. I think that some of the most important work that we do are right here in our own districts and organizations that we're a part of. I've been a part of FSBA. I've been a part of Leadership Florida for several years. I will venture to say that the most impactful things that shape what I do for Polk County Public Schools every day are in organizations that are right here in Polk County and that understand our landscape, that the business community, especially as we look at some of our academies and how we get businesses engaged. I think they're great organizations. I think the larger question is specific to chambers. And Mr. Green, thank you for calling me last night, since it was too late for me to call you. Thank you for calling me last night so that we could chat about kind of where this topic came from. Because I did do a little bit of homework this morning with some of the chambers, and I think it would be beneficial for the district as a whole to be members of the chambers. Every chamber does it a little bit differently. Winter Haven, every individual school is a member, but then also several departments are members. That best practice and across the country really with chambers, usually the district is a member, and then every organization under the district, so every school, any department, they can actually be listed out separately on the chamber page, but then everyone gets access. So I think that could is probably the way to go specific to chamber memberships. I don't think that we each need our own individual membership, but I think the district as a whole needs to be a member of all of our local organizations, and that we need to have a presence in those areas. And Superintendent Hyde and I have talked about this several times before. Just how do we, there's opportunities. I think I could talk all day about the benefits of chambers for schools, but I think one of the greatest opportunities we have is that several of our chambers have young professionals groups. They have other, specific, whether it's socials or happy hours or things that if we are a member as a district, especially most of them have like a highest tier that every employee, no matter if you have 50 employees or 13,000 employees, every employee can attend and participate. That some of those things would be really great benefits for especially those employees that we're recruiting from Pennsylvania or Puerto Rico or other places to come and move here. Once they move here, how are we getting them connected? How are we giving them opportunities to really get involved and engaged in the community? That I think it serves a bigger purpose than just having board members have a membership. So that would be, on the chamber side, that's my stance on where we should be joining for chambers. But I don't necessarily think that we should be limited to the recognized school board associations. I think our jobs as board members is to figure out what we need to best serve our community. And sometimes that looks like school board education. Sometimes that looks like better understanding your community where you are. Sometimes that looks like best understanding maybe a pocket of your community that you don't really know that, whether it's NAACP or the Florence Villa Community Association in my area, things like that are really important for us to be able to get involved with and understand. I'm not sure, and Mr. Green and I talked about this last night, I'm not sure that 216 is relevant because it specifically says a State Department. And as we well know, the state treats us very different than any of their own rules, be it sunshine or gift laws or anything. So I don't know that, because it's silent on school boards, I don't know that that really applies to us. But those are my thoughts.
Ms. Fields?
I would agree with Ms. Wyatt as it relates to the chamber. I don't see the value of having individual board membership. I think that it needs to be district membership, and then board members can be listed, or anybody else that need to be listed. And there is value in being a member of the chamber, and I'm sure that everyone here would attest to that. I think the question for me is if anything outside of the school board association or the leadership state association is in question for a board member, who determines, and maybe no one determines, maybe you self-report yourself. I don't know how it works, but how would you keep a handle on what membership can be done by board members, and what's appropriate and what's not appropriate? I think that's the thing for me. But then I guess, as I said a few minutes ago, everybody have to sit on their own bottom, and they would have to decide whether or not what they're doing is in alignment with what's expected of them as a school board member and what the taxpayers expect of us. Because at the end of the day, all of the expenses can be audited, and then we'd have to explain why we are expending dollars that way. So that's just my take on it.
Mr. Sharpless?
Thank you, Superintendent. If we're looking at Board Policy 00147, and if we're talking about potentially ways to amend that, I want to make sure that whatever we put in there, whenever we're spending money, our own budgets, it needs to have some tie to education. I don't want a rogue board member in the future. I don't think anyone up here, this isn't about anyone up here. It's about, again, policy drives our organization, right? And so when I think of future people in the organization, maybe there's a rogue board member that wants to join some crazy organization. I have no idea, right? And I know we police ourselves, but we still have to have guardrails. And so we develop guardrails for the superintendent and policy. We need to make guardrails for ourselves. So again, I'm not suggesting the language, but it has to have some sort of educational tie. And I don't think anything we talked about, the chamber has an educational tie. The NAACP that you mentioned, educational tie. Everything we've talked about has an educational tie, so that's not an issue for me. But we need to have something, it needs to be reflective in there that is somehow some sort of tie of to education, because a political party. What if someone wanted to pay their dues to a political party out of their school board budget? I'd have an issue with that, right? Because I don't believe our taxpayer dollars should be going towards that. That's the first thing. Second thing, I will tell you that personally, my participation in the Florida School Board Association has been vital to my development as a school board member. So I know it may not be that way for other board members, but for me, the mentoring I get there, the professional development I get there, has helped me to become a better board member. And I would not be the board member I am today without that organization. And also, I will say that the money that we pay in dues towards that organization also goes to the advocacy efforts of our state, which we'll be talking about here in a little bit, an item about our advocacy committee representative. That has a direct tie, okay? It has a direct tie to our FEFP, to our any kind of advocacy we do on the state level, on the national level. I know both my colleagues to my right here have went to the COSBA National Advocacy Conference. So I think that's important. And so, again, whatever it says and however it's changed, as long as we have a tie to education to it, that's going to be critical for me to whether I do an upvote or downvote on anything that gets amended. So that's just my opinion on it. Thank you for hearing me out.
Mr. Keys?
Well, thank you for that, Mr. Sharpless, and I want to echo that. It should always be tied back to education. And then I was going to echo what Ms. Wyatt said also, that I think, and Ms. Fields then seconded, that I think membership in the chamber as a whole, not individually, is very, very important. That's the boots on the ground in our community. We can find these access and resources, get people tied in, not only us to those communities, but also for those communities to the district. So I think our presence there is valued, and I think it would be a good thing. Also for district staff at times as they travel the county, that include community liaisons to be able to have access to those organizations. So I'm definitely in favor of that.
Ms. Miller?
Thank you, Mr. Keys. I agree that it's vital. It's not the only organization to be involved in, just like FSBA, because we all have different needs in our leadership, and we're at different levels. And so I appreciate that FSBA is not removing it. Doesn't remove the importance of the organization. It just varies. It gives other board members that opportunity to have their needs met. And I think what Hillsborough County did is they used the word appropriate expenses and members of inappropriate associations. But I did, discuss with Mr. Green, at least by email, that word appropriate can be, it's not very firm on what that would be, but I don't know that we need to get too detailed in it. I mean, you are an elected official. The budgets are public record. I think we are doing a much better job in transparency on the cost of some of these things that we're involved in and what we bring back to the district with them. And so I'm not concerned with inappropriate use of it. I don't know that I've seen other districts do that. I think that leaders in the community have shown that being a part of multiple organizations is helpful to their district. So I don't know that we need to copy Hillsborough word for word, but I think using them as a reference is great. I think this is going to go much back to procedure, where some of us have more money in our accounts because we're not involved in as many associations, or the dollars don't cost, or the associations we're involved with don't cost as much as others. We need to look at what those district memberships would look like. And, I pay for the Auburndale membership, but it's singular. I don't know that they offer a district-wide membership, but I think we need to do a little research on what's available and make sure that the district is represented and anyone involved in the district feels welcomed and a part of our chambers. Thank you.
Mr. Green?
On that point, I know that staff is looking into each chamber, for instance, to see if they offer a group membership, if that's something that the board desires to expand on this. To the extent that there's individual memberships now, and would it be more cost effective to have one for the whole district or one for the board kind of thing? We're researching that, what the cost is and whether that's an option. Since Ms. Fields brought up about accountability and, will this be subject to, oversight? Another chapter I didn't mention in my statutory review is 119, specifically 119.01, subsection 3. It says if public funds are expended by an agency, and that would include school board, this policy applies to state, county, municipal records. If public funds are expended by an agency and payment of dues or membership contributions for any person, all the membership records of that person are public records, just, for consideration on how this is expanded. That's it.
Ms. Wyatt?
Thank you. And as it should be, I think it's important that the community knows what we're involved in. One of the things I said when I was first running was that we don't need 7 23-year-olds on the school board, but we need one is valuable to have. But I think that speaks true for each of the topics that we represent. I would hope that we have someone that is more involved in agriculture than I am, because I can't grow anything and keep it green. But if that's something that there's organizations that you should be a deeper part of to be able to really engage in that space, then I think that's something that we should make sure that we have board members representing different spaces. The Sheriff's Department does a really good job of making sure that their leadership team is all members of different Rotaries, Kiwanis clubs, that they really are fully represented. That I don't know, for those of you that go to Rotary or Kiwanis, I don't know that I've ever been to a meeting anywhere in the county that there has not been at least one representative from Polk County Sheriff's Department, if not 2 or 3. But it really just does give the ability for us to be in the community and see see additional things going on, and be present and available in that space. But I did want to, and I actually pressed the button before you said it, but political parties is one that I think that definitely, whether that needs to be specifically written in there or whether that could become just part of appropriate, there are definitely things I think that if it goes against what we are trying to do in public education, we want to make sure that that's not something that we're supporting. However, I think when we look across the full gamut, how many things are not education? That when we start looking at the different industries that, we have an academy for everything, different industries that are involved in our school district, things like that, I think it gives we have a really great opportunity here to make sure that our board is as involved and present moving forward as we have been thus far. So, thank you.
Dr. Allen?
Thanks, Superintendent. Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely in support of all the discussion thus far. I think from my perspective is maybe it's, and it is within our policy, I believe, somewhere, and Mr. Green can affirm that or reject that, but the fact that we're supposed to approve our budget, like our board budget annually. So I don't know if we can codify a formalized process for approving memberships or if that's needed or not, but just to know what all membership involvement is as a board. So, I mean, obviously we report these things out, so we have like an idea what we're all doing membership-wise, but from a transparency standpoint, yes, it's in public record. I don't think I've ever wanted to make a records request on what all membership everybody's involved in. But I think it'd just be something that could be a part of that annual when we're discussing our board budget and approving our board budget on that annual basis. I think it's in July, June, possibly. That is just a point of that discussion, would be my only recommendation. And maybe it's something that could be included in the policy as well, so it's codified. That's my only comment. Thank you.
So there are a couple things, just want to clarify too. The statute says, and when you do the research on the legal ability for school board members to belong to associations outside of traditional or formalized school board organizations, there's a consistent pattern that comes up in the legal review. Number one, it must be directly related to your duties and responsibilities as a school board member, and it cannot benefit a school board member politically. And so, as Dr. Allen just mentioned, the recommendation, happy to work on it with staff and Mr. Green, is to develop a process and a timeline each year where the board will have to vote to approve what organizations you want to be members of. But along with that, the board also needs to come up with policy or procedures on how you exit from a group. Because should a group take a position politically, which they do quite frequently, that does not align with the school board, your responsibility as school board members is to support the district, not personal opinion and viewpoints. So you're going to need an exit strategy should a group, Rotary, Chamber, whatever other groups you ultimately approve, you're going to need to have a formalized process to withdraw from that organization at that time. So it's going to create an additional burden of us having to monitor all their legislative platform initiatives and other things that they're actively engaged in, because they very well may be counterproductive for the district as a whole. So those are the things I would encourage you to consider as we move forward. We're happy to reach out. I know Ms. Miller and I have had conversations about this for some time now. We're happy to try and reach out to see if we can get a school board membership. I do not support a district-wide membership. I would support a school board membership because trying to go to 14,000 employees, the cost is going to be prohibitive for those organizations. So at the end of the day, we could bargain that or try to negotiate a consistent fee across all chambers, and they should all have the same fee structure. I'm not going to pay more for one and more for another or less than here. So we're more than happy to reach out and ask if we can see if they're willing to add a fee structure for membership for the school board. And then to Dr. Allen's point, when you approve your budget each year, when you approve the district budget, during that process, you're approving the budget that goes to board members for the purposes of membership, travel, and those things. And then we would take the total amount for, if the board agrees to this, I'm just kind of trying to outlay kind of a roadmap of where we might go. So let's say total for across Polk County, let's say it's $2,000 for every chamber, every Rotary, all those things. We would simply divide it by 7. And it would be deducted from your budget statement so that you're paying your proportionate share of that membership. I think that also makes it cleaner in your budget to restrict it to the board and not expand it beyond you as a group. I get invited anytime there's a topic related to education, so I don't require a membership. More often than not, many of you don't either. You get invited quite frequently as well. So I would just offer that and just have you contemplate the reality that at some point you may need to retreat from a group because our priorities no longer align. So it's just something to consider.
What happens if the board members' thoughts and ideas align with the group that is not in alignment with the school district? Are you understanding what I'm saying?
Yes, ma'am. I would argue at that point, and I would obviously defer to legal, I would argue that that board member is now in conflict with the intent of the statute. The intent of the statute is not to allow your personal ideology to move forward. Your membership and allowance to participate in these organizations is very specifically stated in the statute that it is support the school district, not the individual. So I would be my response to that, but I don't know if Mr. Green has anything to add to that.
Yeah, so right now, the policy is very narrow. It's currently, the board may authorize expenses in recognized school board associations. I think that's 2 groups. So the discussion today was, does the board wish to expand it beyond those 2 groups on, whatever tied to education? I don't know. I think it's helpful to define. It can be expand, but I think it's helpful to define because, what's appropriate to one person might be inappropriate to another. And again, the board has to make this decision. What's the board's will on allowing expenses to be paid out of the board budget for these types of things? Is it broad? Is it going to continue to be narrow? Just for discussion, because it's come up on maybe it's too narrow. So, how you want to expand it. We can offer some language choices, and you can say that's still too narrow, or that's good, but
and much like you would approve your budgets each year as you do for your individual board member or the collective board, and then it's distributed equally amongst all of you, I would encourage that the process involve an annual approval for what groups are going to participate, because much to that question, these things may evolve over time, but I think to that extent, we would also proffer language that essentially would place some restrictions on membership groups. Because I think, as it was said earlier, there's a lot we can categorize as education related. The question is it in the district's best interest? Is it in the board's best interest to allow certain groups to become, or board members to become members of certain groups? And you don't have to name a group. You could simply say the board agrees not to align or not to approve memberships within groups that align themselves solely in a political ideology. It doesn't even have to be specific to any political party. It could simply say we're not going to take a position in that. But we can play with the language. Ultimately, the board will approve it or deny it or ask for modification. So at least we have a starting point. Hopefully, this is making sense. I really wanted to make sure I listened to the majority of your comments. So that we could actually come up with a plan on how to best address this. But again, I think simply stated, each year we would bring a list forward for the board to approve. These are the memberships that we are approving this year. You then subsequently approve your board budget and allow us to attempt to see if we can come to some understanding with all of those respective groups as to one standardized fee structure for 7 board members. I think that's fair, and I think they would be very receptive to that. They'd rather have your involvement than not have your involvement, quite frankly. And I think that's it's good stewardship on your behalf in those areas. So, Ms. Miller.
I just have a couple of things. First, I want to thank Dr. Allen for bringing up that board budget. I am requesting again now publicly that we have that discussion about our budgets and it's transparent with the community on the dollars that are being spent. And plus, just to learn more about it, maybe learn how it works, learn if there needs to be changes in how it is developed or how it changes. So I'm making that request that we do that have it with the district's budget, but have us look at our budget because it's been very difficult to get that and understand specifically what we are spending. I'm trying, and my mind is racing right now because I think being in law that you are going to that extreme, and I'm trying to think of organizations locally that we wouldn't want to be a part of, so I don't know. But maybe the superintendent will tell me later how that could go awry. I do want to make a public statement that Kiwanis and Rotary are nonpartisan community organizations that go out of their way to show that they are not a partisan organization. So I don't want them to feel like they're being targeted there. We're also not the only elected group in the county or the state. I'd be interested in what the cities are doing, the municipalities and or the BOCC with membership. So if you could do a little research on that, that might be helpful. And then I feel like we're getting so narrow in this, and we may need to because of legal reasons, but I don't mind, the list, this is all the organizations your school board belongs to, the individuals belong to these certain organizations. Is that going to go into conferences and things? Because we all do kind of have our own, background and interest. I may not have an interest in some educational practices that other board members have an interest in, and then there might be discussion, do I need to agree with all of them for them to be able to attend? And I don't feel that. I don't want that to be an issue, but I do want to allow the opportunity, us that have done COSBA in the past, and there's 2 or 3 that go now, there may be another event or conference that would be beneficial to our district that one of us could go to. But I don't think it's my place to tell someone, even if they're going to learn about more of an educational practice that may not be something I 100% agree with, I don't know that I need to vote them not allowed to go. So I don't know how narrow we need to get in this. I prefer not to go that narrow with people because we are elected officials, and at the end, you are responsible to your community for the dollars you spend and what you do, and you will be held accountable, hopefully. But I would like some research done on how other either districts or municipalities or the BOCC board handles some of their memberships. Thank you.
Mr. Sharpless?
Thank you, Superintendent. I'm going to go back to a point that was made earlier about, educational relevance, that kind of thing, and to address something that Board Member Wyatt said, just about, different career academies and that. Well, that's a direct tie to education. So it may not be an educational organization, but they have to, in my opinion, again, however we capture that language, I don't know how that language is captured, it needs to be able to tie, again, to our school district and the advancement of our school district, okay? I'll also like to point out and just put on the record that when we went to individual board member budgets and we talked about, board members having membership in certain organizations or not, the whole point of it was to give autonomy to our board members. And now we're talking about being members of chambers and not having a choice in that, right? We're saying, okay, we're using that budget, we're spreading it across 7 board members. What if one of our board members didn't want to be a member of a chamber? Please don't take my comments as saying that I don't value the chamber work, because I do. What I'm saying is, if we're giving autonomy to board members to be a member of, let's say, FSBA or not, then we also should give autonomy on whether or not board members should be members of other organizations. So in that case, I don't think it should be board member, should not be board memberships, it should be individual memberships, because each individual member gets to do that. Now, unless there's some sort of opt-out, opt-in policy, I don't know. But you get my point here, right? The reason we did that was to give board members autonomy, and now we're saying we're not giving board members autonomy. So I just want to make sure that we're fair in this and we're doing this the right way. At the end of the day, do I think we're all going to make the right decisions for us as individual board members? Yes. I Do I think the voters of this county will hold us accountable if we don't? Yes. I will also ask, when we go, and I hear you loud and clear, Board Member Miller, that when we have our budget discussion, we should be talking about our individual budgets as well, in addition to the school board budget. So I concur. As board chair, that's what I would want to do as well, okay? But I hold firm to the fact that we are all capable individuals. We're all six of us, as well as Board Member Wallace, all seven of us want what's best for the school district, and we're going to be held accountable if the voters do not think we're doing that. And that's my piece. Thank you.
White.
Thank you. I'm going to take Mr. Sharplett's piece too, because I do believe it's important for the board members to have autonomy in whether or not they're members of any organization. You mentioned chambers, and I would love the opportunity, and we can do this offline, but to talk a little bit more with you about what chamber membership at a district level looks like, because I would be very concerned if we were paying the same amount for a membership in each of our chambers at a district level, just because they're very different organizations. You have a Lakeland chamber that has over 1,000 members. You have smaller chambers that are smaller municipalities that may have 100 members, so their membership tiers are structured to be representative of that. So I want to make sure that we're not paying the same for every chamber, because that would not be the best fiduciary responsibility for us. But I do think that it concerns me that we wouldn't look to at least explore that opportunity as a district-wide to have memberships, because we already require many of our schools to have a membership in their local chamber. But I think that there's a lot more to it than. So I would love to explore that conversation further.
Okay. Mr. Green?
I had a couple thoughts. First, I did check in the fall with my counterparts in FSBA about whether membership in a voluntary organization outside of the recognized school board associations, is permitted in their districts. And gave an example of Kiwanis. And the consensus was no, of the 5 who responded, that they don't allow it. They wouldn't, if it had come up, they wouldn't. They don't currently. Just for purposes of comparison of what are other districts doing. Another thought too is, to the extent that a board member finds a particular membership valuable outside of the recognized school board associations that the board currently allows for, there's nothing stopping you from joining that as a member. It's just, we're looking at the specific phrase of, will the board approve that expense? That's all. Do we want to expand it beyond what we're currently allowing? That's it.
Mr. Keys?
I'm going to try to be extremely brief. I worry about, on the approval side of things, the possibility of the dynamics of our board currently are very favorable towards this discussion, and we should have the autonomy. But I wonder about, when we talk about approval of, that there may be situations in the future where we have a majority of wanting something and a minority not wanting the same thing, or we have the back and forth about what's applicable, what's not. So we have to be very cognizant of, when we set that policy, what that looks like. And I tend to favor Ms. Wyatt says. I think I would find it very odd on the chamber particular discussion that they would not want us to be a part of that, right? And I think that we just need to define really what membership looks like in those particular areas. And again, what Mr. Sharpless said, I think that's, after we having the discussion, that's why this discussion is so helpful, is that not all 7 of us may not find value in that. And to take those memberships as a whole and divide them amongst, I think, really takes away from the spirit of what we're trying to do here. But I think that is going to come to light in discussion with the individual chambers, and maybe that whole group, all of them as a whole, saying, what would you like from your school board in the county, and how can we play a part in your organization, and make sense of that. And then what Mr. Green finally said, I'm a little bit, I guess, on this one, I was a Rotarian before I was on the school board. and I'll probably be Rotarian after I was a school board, but that's a personal choice. There's nothing stopping you from saying, if we're not saying that that's educated related. I know they're very neutral, politically speaking, but there's nothing stopping us from board members who are paid for this position to exercise our membership in those organizations outside of our official duties. So I'm not too concerned about that. But again, I think the spirit of it is we have to be very specific in the way we line this out as policy-wise, not only for us currently, we work well together, but what happens after we're not here. So that's all I have to say. I think that was brief.
Ms. Miller?
I just want to let the board know that currently the Lakeland Chamber, the lowest tier is $432, and that's where we are as a district, but none of the board members are listed as members. And those spots that are allowed at that tier are taken up by others in the district. So it'll be interesting to see what the chambers offer. I want to go back to, again, saying I think we need, if there's an issue that arises in the future, you can always amend policy, but to restrict and not provide autonomy to board members, you'll get into the back and forth. And I do not think that's fair to the board members, or, everybody has their own personal decisions on what they joined and to be a part of. I don't know that we need to get in the back and forth on whose ideas and whose organizations are more than or greater than. I would like to line up the dollars. If I'm assigned a certain amount of dollars and I can use them to do 15 things, that is what I should be doing as a board member. If another board member is in an organization that takes most of that money because they find value in it, then that's their purview. I don't know that the board needs to decide that for each other. So I do not want us to go down the road of making us look at each other and have the conversation about whose organization is superior to the other. That is so off the charts for an elected board. So please do not send us that direction. And I'm looking forward to seeing what your wording looks like in the amendment. Thank you.
Ms. Wyatt?
Thank you. I agree, and I just want to, because we, in our board budgets, have them both listed, this would include, we look at both memberships and conferences. So I want to make sure that as we're going down this road that we do keep it where each member has autonomy, because, I may find that being a member of Rotary, which, again, I was a member before I was on the board, and I'll be a member probably till the day I die. But if being a member of Rotary and going every Thursday is what you as a board member feel is the best way for you to serve as a school board member, then I would much rather you be able to spend that $500 there than going to a conference for 2 days and soaking up a ton of information. But whichever, I want you to be able to make the decision of which one you feel like is best able to support your work on the school board and your education as a school board member. So I just wanted to throw that out there, that I think it leads into both categories, not just the membership, since they're all budgeted together. Thank you.
Mr. Sharpless?
Yep. The only other thing I want to say is that many times we might find out about an organization during the year that we might want to be a member of. So while our budgets we approve, and we're not getting into the granular of approving each individual organization, I think we also need to have something in there about flexibility. Whenever your budget isn't being used, for certain things we can use for others, Also, I think, we should be able to, within, let's say, I'm going to give you an example, okay? Because currently I serve as the treasurer of the Florida School Board Association. Because of my service on there, they cover my conference registrations, right? I'm saving the district money. They're not paying for me to do that, right? Because FSBA is. And so I also think we should have the flexibility to be able to gift parts of our budget to other board members. Let's say another board member has a conference, they've ran out of money, and I want to be able to help them, right? I should be able to gift that to them because, or any of us. I think that's important, and somehow if we can capture that in a policy where we can assign, board members have the autonomy to assign parts of our budgets to other board members to help them, I think, fulfill their duties in this. I think that's an important piece. And so, that's the last thing I'll add to it.
Mr. Green?
Just to, I guess, maybe bring it full circle. So I don't want, we're looking at this policy and whether the board wishes to authorize expenses beyond the two recognized school board associations. So to the extent that that revised language doesn't include a specific group, it's not telling you you can't be a member of that group and you don't have the autonomy to become a member, a Rotarian or whatever it may be. It's simply the board doesn't want to use its funds to pay those expenses, that's all. So I think it would be easiest for purposes of, if we're going to do an amendment, being transparent as to, we know what recognized school board associations are. There's two of them. So does that include Chamber? Does that include Kiwanis? Does that include Rotary? Does that include, to define it so everyone knows what the board's budget is being used for expenses? That would be the easiest way to draft it, as opposed to using words like appropriate, because that's, again, that's a very arbitrary or hard term to define. Tied to education, again, that's another tough one. It's hard. I mean, I understand the intent. I think that's good. You know, any fund should be tied to that, but how tenuous can that tie, how tenuous is the tie? I think we know all the associations you're members of now. That's a defined set. So is the board good with paying the expenses of those particular organizations outside of FSBA and Leadership Florida? That's really kind of the issue of whether the board wishes to do that or not. So
the only thing, Mr. Green, that I heard you say that I want to make sure I clarify, you said the board members wouldn't pay for that, and that's not true. The board members will pay for that from their individual budgets. The district will not cover those costs. Outside of what the budget is that the board approves annually, board members presently get a considerable amount of money for travel, memberships, and they should be able to work within that. To Mr. Sharpless's point, the request that board members have flexibility that they could reassign dollars to other board members was addressed when we first rolled out your individual budgets. That was addressed publicly. We can definitely make sure that we get that into the language. Moving forward, that would require a board vote, because for transparency purposes, you're moving budgets between budget items, so you would need to say, we're transferring dollars from here to there, and that can be done through action item or consent at subsequent board meetings. The things I would encourage the board to reflect on further. So from what I heard, we don't want to see if we can get one standard fee structure for everyone across the board. As such, you pay what you pay for each one of those respective groups. So if one group charges $500 and another commensurate group charges $700, your participation is your decision, and you'll pay that fee structure based off of what they charge. If they don't presently have something, we're happy to reach out and see if we can have a conversation with them to see if there's something that they could do. The benefit was, and in my initial conversations with Ms. Miller, the concern was, are all 7 board members paying the same fee, rather than can we get one lump sum charge, which would be significantly lower and cover all 7, but clearly you're not interested in that. So if you want that flexibility, I'm still going to encourage the board to come up with language about what groups you should not participate in, or which groups should cause pause to be paid for from school district funds. If you don't set those guardrails, it's going to become a conversation for some of you. It just is, by virtue of your outside affiliations, and it's not just this board, it's the board in general moving forward. You want to provide some protections there. So definitely we can work with Mr. Green, but that's the summary of what I've heard. So for us, as far as action steps moving forward, Mr. Green will work to address the existing policy to provide the flexibility the board's requested, and that basically captures it in a nutshell. So.
Not a total nutshell, because you have a speaker.
Ms. Miller?
This is my last comment on this subject, because I feel like we've done this for a while. The reason Hillsborough County uses the word appropriate is because they do not and as you see in a lot of policy, especially at the state level, when you start being finite with what it is, or you start listing organizations, if something comes up where the school board member wants to be a part of, go to something that's affiliated with, unless you start with some kind of really low discretionary dollars that can be used, you're going to be trying to amend policies to add. I just think it's poor governance. I think that there's a reason that that language was used. If we want to add in, it can't be a political affiliation, that's perfectly fine. I didn't even imagine that, but I guess that could be a problem at some point. But to go in and try to start listing, I just don't, you're talking about local control. You're taking away board members' how they decide to be a part of the community. So I think there's a reason you saw other districts use that kind of broad language, and I would rather go that direction than trying to add things throughout the year when we have packed agendas doing important work. We're entrusted by the vote. Some of us, that went to general elections by 100,000 plus votes. I think that we need to take that responsibility and use it as it's intended, and not be micromanaged into list of what will belong to.
Ms. Wyatt?
Thank you. My concerns were along the same, because when you recapped it, Mr. Green, that part of it went in direct conflict, I think, of what I heard the rest of the board say, which is that we don't want a specific list of organizations or types of organizations for the very reasons that Ms. Miller has alluded to, and for the very reasons that we've talked about earlier when we were addressing policy today, that how long has it taken us to get a binder out of a book it just isn't relevant anymore, even though it was very relevant back then. So I would encourage us not to create a list of what's allowed, but rather to, if we have types of organizations that are not allowed, and have the rest be, as long as it is appropriate and supports education, supports the work of the board members, which cannot include political organizations, whatever the language ends up being, but not to create a specific list, but to just make sure it ties back to education and supporting the role of a school board member.
Ms. Fields?
I feel like we're beating this horse to death. I agree with Superintendent Hyde. I think that we need to have some type of guardrails on what we don't want to see, because we're not going to be in these seats forever. And we need to make sure that we have something that's going to be amenable for our kids and our employees long term.
Okay, seeing no further questions or comments, thank you, board members. At this time, we are going to go into a closed session, Mr. Chair. So we will need to clear the room, with the exception of our safe school specialist.
This also give our people time to transition.
Yes. Ms. Jenkins, could you check with IT next door and make sure that they let us know when we're off and that they're not recording?
COPS. We have 3 different series we've listed there. Our annual lease payments are approximately $22.5 million through fiscal year 2028. Then they decrease to $5.1 million, and then in 2029 to $4.9 million. In 2030 is the final maturity. In addition to those, the district also makes a $4 million lease payment every year for Scenic Terrace. We have $114.9 million of Series 2019 sales tax revenue bonds outstanding, and their final maturity is October of 2033. The average annual debt service is $16.2 million. All that being said, and only referring to COPS, not sales tax, we have a borrowing capacity of $883 million. Any questions on that slide?
No, ma'am.
Yes, sir. The major projects that we're recommending for borrowing for the COPS is in the amount of $307 million. That includes Alta Vista, Lake Alfred, Juanita, auditorium at McLaughlin Middle, Floral Avenue Elementary, and deferred maintenance. The 4 schools are renovation and capacity addition. That's basically a redo of the schools, a new auditorium, and then deferred maintenance would be decided.
Pause there for a second. Mr. Sharpless?
Ms. Jenkins, thank you. Looking at that $63 million for deferred maintenance, we just had our board retreat, and we saw, our big sticker shock of over $1 billion in deferred maintenance. Because of that report from Alpha, do we want to potentially increase the amount we're borrowing to address of deferred maintenance? And I'm not sure if that's a question for you or if that's a question for Superintendent Hyde. I'm asking the question to you, Superintendent Hyde, and you can tell me which one.
Yes, sir. So I will allow Ms. Jenkins to answer after what I share now. There is a cap on how much we can borrow, so we want to stay within that threshold. We also want to be respectful of what we can afford to borrow and repay so that we don't leave a legacy debt behind. In addition, part of this contemplates some of the corrections, if you recall from the retreat, some of those recommended issues will be addressed through new construction and renovation of existing buildings. But from there, I'll let Ms. Jenkins explain further if there is any room left that we could increase that dollar amount for debt purposes. But Ms. Jenkins?
You answered it beautifully. I don't have anything to add.
I get lucky every once in a while.
What we did do is we took a look at our projects that we were planning on paying for with sales tax, because you can't use impact fees for deferred maintenance. So we've taken a look at our whole project list and kind of realigned, and we're borrowing against those funds that will essentially free up a little bit more to be added to the maintenance. We already budget $10 million a year for deferred, $10 million for current maintenance. And then that would add 63, which could then be used for specific things like roofing or HVAC. And those are tangible items that will aid in our deferred. And then if we have, we'll do a review, and what's left over can then be allocated to additional projects. So I'm going to try and explain that. The next couple of slides are a little heavy, but I wanted to give you all as much information as I could.
Hang on one second, Ms. Jenkins. Also, board members, as you look at the list there could, obviously the board could reject this list and say we'd like more capital shifted towards deferred maintenance projects. The only thing is, I would just ask, if we go line by line, if we defer Alta Vista, we were going to replace their previous site and then use that as a swing site for Nina Vista. So part of that, just keep in mind, is if we defer one, it may impact others. The 2 that are geographically landlocked or isolated would be Juanita or Floral Avenue, if the board wanted to arrive at a decision to defer the replacement for those schools. However, I'd want to make sure I speak with Ms. Jenkins further that neither one of them is being covered by impact fees or by additional dollars. But since they're listed here, the argument is they're not. These are dollars we're borrowing for these projects. So you do have some options there if you wanted to shift more funding. Just understand that it then defers some of these schools for a year or two further. And then we would have to potentially go back to the 5-year capital plan and restructure that to address these schools differently. The only project that's on here is the McLaughlin Middle Senior Auditorium, that to make it commensurate with all other high schools in 612s, they really do need an auditorium. So that would be the only other thing I would add or contribute there. Ms. Miller.
Hi, I just have a quick question. We start talking about bonding. Some of us that have been around a long time sit up a little straighter, because there was a time in this district where we were in trouble with what we were doing. And it wasn't done in with intent. The economy went down, and we had a lot of debt. And our constituents reminded us of that daily. And so, you know, I have faith there are people in place. I just want to assure the public there are systems in place and procedures to review the bond, review cost-saving measures as time goes on, so we do not find ourselves in that position again. Because we have great people that move on, and sometimes systems and procedures are not kept.
Yes, ma'am. I've been here 6 years, so when I came, we did have 5 different debt instruments, and we have paid a lot of those off. We had some complicated pieces too. We had swaps, we had done a lot of interesting financing, and those are those are paid off, and we're down to a very minimal amount of debt. This is being presented with intention, and we do understand that and don't want to put the district in a place again. As for the $63 million for deferred maintenance, that's the largest amount we can borrow for deferred maintenance, but we can change the projects, as the superintendent stated, and then divert those funds to deferred maintenance. And I will, as we move on, I'll show you our funding, and then maybe that will help clear it up a little bit.
Mr. Keys?
I'm just going to make a kind of a catch-all comment. I think that as a board, we do need to look at knowing now more realistically what the maintenance is going to cost us, looking at those projects for the future and saying, hey, based on capacities and what we gauge enrollment to be in the future, can we put some of these projects off 1 or 2 years? I think we need to have an item on the agenda coming up sooner than later to really look at that and potentially shift our 5-year capital outlay to take care of some of the maintenance issues.
Go ahead, Ms. Jenkins.
Okay. This slide is our capital long-range projection out to 2030. So it shows you our estimated collections for impact fees, sales tax, local capital improvement, LCI, CO&DS, capital outlay and debt service. That's an allocation we receive from the state. And then our debt service payments along with our scenic terrace payment. Our total existing debt is around $42.7 million out until we hit 2029, and then it reduces to $25,300,000 a year. As you go, you'll see on the next slide, we went out a couple more years, so it goes out lower. Our new COPS estimation, and again, this is just an estimation, the market changes daily, is $27 million for the debt service payment. So the following line shows you our remaining revenue after debt service. We would have in 26-27 about $200 million in remaining revenue after we made all of our debt service payments, including the new amount. If you look at just sales tax and LCI, which that's what can be used for deferred maintenance, we'd have $137 million, then it goes up to $144. It increases each year. If you take out our LCI estimated budget, and that's for things like our one-to-one, our school buses, our athletic equipment, different pieces make up that budget, we end up at around $116 million, goes out to $141. Or that's how much that budget is, my apologies. And then our remaining budget is about $20 million that could be reallocated. Again, this is a lot of information on one slide. I apologize. If we look out, this goes out to 2036, 37. We took it out this far because I wanted you to see at 2034 is where everything is paid off. Even the new bond would be paid off, and we would just have the Scenic Terrace debt remaining. Do you all have questions? Does that make sense? Okay. I referred to the LCI budget, so I wanted to list what was in that. We have yearly maintenance, safety and security, technology, transportation, bus and fleet vehicles, athletic and fine arts. We do supply instruments for our schools as well. That's one big piece of our budget every year. And a portion of the maintenance and bus driver salaries are charged to capital. The estimated expense is about $112 million a year. For borrowing, our timeline, we participated in a ratings call last week. We will have the results of that today, actually, after this meeting. Our insurance proposals are supposed to come in on April 16th. We have something we are completing called a preliminary offering statement, POS. The deadline for final comments on that is April 23rd, followed by a due diligence conference call. Those different documents rate our attractiveness to purchasers that would purchase the bonds that would fund our projects. And then the negotiated sale date would be May 5th. That's when they actually sell the bonds. And then we would have a pre-closing and a closing date after that. So the timeline can occur rather quickly, and with the state of the market, it's recommended that if this is something the board chooses to do, that we move forward with it.
Ms. Miller?
Just a question of, have we always used that same budget piece for a portion of maintenance and bus driver salaries?
No, ma'am. There was a legislative change a couple years ago, and this year is where we added bus driver salaries into that piece.
Okay. I have not seen that before, so thank you.
Mr. Keys?
Just real quick, and you don't have to spit it out to me immediately, but with the new COPS for 26, 27, give me a ballpark what our DSCR would be based on the revenue? Because when I'm adding up just roughly, I'm like at a 386, close to. Does that sound accurate, or is that off?
Sounds close.
Okay.
Go ahead, Ms. Jenkins.
I'm finished.
Okay. There are no further questions or comments.
Thank you.
Board members, as it relates to this, just before Ms. Jenkins leaves, while you may not have any further questions or comments, is there any further information you'd like to see presented at the next workshop?
I always have a list.
As it relates to this topic?
Yeah.
I thought that's what I said.
I just heard, did you have a list for the next work session?
Sorry, that's the same thing I heard.
Well, that would be under old or new business.
Yes, thank you.
Dr. Allen?
Yeah, I mean, it seemed like there's a proposed discussion around whether we would want to reallocate within that. So I don't know if you wanted to further that conversation or not. It was just sort of, low-hanging fruit there. I wasn't sure if that was a prompt to have a further discussion on that. But maybe, hearing some of your thoughts on that.
Yeah, and that's
as
why
far
I
as
offered
recommendation.
that within the construct in the framework that was provided, is that if the board wanted to defer additional dollars or redirect some of those proposed dollars to deferred maintenance, we would need to know that. Because it would affect overall what we communicate and convey to lenders and to the community as a whole. And then again, anything that would change on here potentially has an impact to the 5-year capital plan as well. Because one of these projects, obviously, there are a couple on here, the Alta Vista serving as a swing school and allowing us to address another campus which is landlocked and has no physical space for expansion or renovation. it's contingent, one's contingent, directly contingent upon the other. So that in and of itself removes over $100 million from that budget, but that doesn't remove our obligation or need to address those school campuses in the future. So it's just something to keep in mind. Redirect funds now, we still have to figure out a mechanism to cover those expenses in the future. But we always want to be respectful of the board's concerns, and the whole intent behind the retreat to give you the list of deferred maintenance was to stop kicking the can down the road. You know, our unfortunate reality is funding's funding. And to Ms. Miller's point, you know, previously we were not in a good place with our borrowing. District worked very aggressively over the years to have addressed that. We have probably one of the best debt ratios in the entire state as a school district. But a lot of that too comes at the cost of not doing deferred maintenance. So I think it needs to be communicated well. And then additionally, it needs to be included in an overarching conversation about what we're doing with the half-penny sales tax, what we're doing with impact fees. So again, happy to bring this back for further discussion at the next workshop, so that board members can ask over the next couple of weeks for any background information you feel that you need in order for us to have a productive conversation at that time. So, did I answer your question, Dr. Allen?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Mr. Sharpless.
I would like to see on this slide about the different projects, the projects that are listed here that would be addressed with the COPS. I would like to see if we go through with that project. This helps me in my decision making. If we go through with that project for the especially for the ones that are renovation, how much of our deferred maintenance budget are we actually? How much of it would the project eliminate? Like, you know, does the renovation to Alta Vista, you know, help with this deferred maintenance or what? You get the point I'm trying to make?
Yeah, we can do that. We have that analysis by site, and Mr. Hannon then presented it generally speaking at the retreat, but we could carve it out by school site.
Only for the COPS stuff here, yeah. Thank you. That would help me.
Well, actually, I would ask that we go just the next step further, that anything else that we're addressing through half-penny sales tax or the five-year capital plan that the board is already committed to, that we'll go ahead and include those as well, because might as well give you all the information at one time.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Mr. Keys.
Really quickly, I think some of that was addressed. I said we've seen that number go down. And so, for instance, the Alta Vista situation, if there were an assessment of that site that we were deficient on, that went away because that's being demolished.
Correct.
Am I correct in saying so?
Right, replaced, yes, sir.
Or replaced, yeah, that's right. So, I like that word better. No, but again, I think I'm echoing what Mr. Sharpless said and what was previously said. It would be nice to have a list of saying, hey, these is what, you know, that Series 2026 would include. And then if we can say, hey, well, these priorities need to shift, you know, in the future a little bit more, and let's address, because me, personally, I want to see addressed, you know, maintenance items, deferred maintenance now first. Those, especially those ones we've seen that were the reds, kind of, so to speak, and then maybe divert some of those funds to that first, and then push off a project a little bit later.
And we'll provide a narrative for each one as far as implications, perceived implications, should a project be deferred 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. We'll provide a narrative to explain what that might mean, and then when we would expect to see that project come back. Because at that point, we may have, like I said, should the board vote to do that, I would arguably bring back the five-year capital plan to readjust and reprioritize those projects. And I know that becomes, we want to do that very cautiously, because it's become a frustration point and a joke at the same time for some of our building leaders, because the five-year capital plan is the five-year capital plan that, well, this year, the five-year capital plan says something different than next year's five-year capital plan versus the last year, because unfortunately, new priorities arise and projects get bumped. So if we do so, we want to make sure we do so carefully and with a high level of communication and transparency. So, okay. Thank you. Ms. Jenkins, I see no further questions. Thank you very much. Mr. Chair, I will turn it over to you at this point.
Thank you, Superintendent. You see we have informational item, Head Start Service Report for your review. We don't have a board meeting, so we don't have an agenda review. However, we do have unfinished business, the high school update. Superintendent?
Mr. Green.
Thank you. So I wanted to give the board a quick update of where we are with the project. It changes almost by the minute or hour at this point. So I developed a timeline to kind of help myself keep track of where we are, and I'll just kind of review it with you quickly here. So the goal is, let me back up 1 second. Right now, the current status of the agreement, we're at the trying to approve the 90% plans. So the 90% plans are one of the items in the interim agreement. And what the interim agreement says is that upon the school board's acceptance of the 90% plans and the project budget, the school board and developer will, in good faith, negotiate the terms and conditions of the comprehensive agreement. What we've been doing in an effort to stay on schedule, and again, the schedule, the looming date in the future is opening the school in August of 2028. In order to do that, you backtrack. We got to break ground very soon. And so because we haven't finalized the 90% plans and approved them, we've been working in parallel trying to get a finalized comprehensive agreement. Bottom line is we're close. So the goal, just to lay out the timeline for you, tomorrow's April 15th. Besides tax day, it's also the deadline for the agenda for the April 28th agenda. That's the work session, April 28th. Our goal is to have a approved by both parties comprehensive agreement and approved 90% plans by tomorrow. That would then allow for placement of those items at the April 28th work session so that the board could consider potential approval at its next meeting on May 5th. We are currently in the process of, we sent, for the comprehensive agreement, we've sent a, we thought was a fair and could be potentially final draft to Fortress. They revised it, sent it back to us, and now we're kind of in that middle area of negotiating the back and forth of that. We have a meeting today at 1:30, again with the goal of trying to finalize by tomorrow. So that's on a tight timeline. That other piece, though, the prerequisite to finalizing, even negotiating the comprehensive, is approval of the 90% plans. So where are we with that? Our facilities department has been working very closely, almost on a daily basis, with Fortress and their architectural engineering team to look at the plans and add notes and to make sure those notes are incorporated in the updated plans. Because we're, again, pushing up against a hard deadline, a workaround we're trying to do, because the plans have not been finalized, the 90% plans. So the workaround is there is going to be a, what do we call it here? Make sure I get the terminology right here. A clarification page that will have all of the notes that aren't reflected in the 90% plans. It's sort of like an addendum, basically, that will show that all of our notes have been accepted, not in the plans because it takes some time to update that document, but basically both parties are in agreement to the design portions of the plans. So wanted to provide that update to you so you kind of know, as of the 12:18 p.m. today, we're close. The goal is to get this to you on the agenda for the next work session, April 28th.
Excellent. Fellow board members, you have any questions for Mr. Green? Please signify. Board Member Miller, you are now recognized.
Can we get an update after that meeting today so we know that you're on schedule?
Yes,
Thank you.
can do.
Any other board member comments or questions? No, Mr. Green, I do have one question. Does that timeline that you're mentioning that you've developed, does that correlate with the timeline that we've been given?
Yes.
Okay.
Same one.
So then I just want to make sure that if there's anything that's different, I would like to know that information, so.
Yeah, I've developed the timeline, it's not me, but in coordination with Fortress, in coordination with our team of, when are we trying to open the school? When do we need to break ground? And then all the things that need to happen to get to that point. So I've put it on paper, and shared it with everybody, so everyone's on the same sheet of music. And yeah, it's one we're all operating off of right now.
Thank you, sir.
Sure.
All right, seeing no other board member comments or questions about that, we do have one piece of new business to discuss. So in order to have us prepared for the new FSBA year, we need to have a discussion on our advocacy representative, our FSBA Board of Director position. That's a 2-year position, and so Board Member Allen will fulfill his 2nd year of that because he's in year 1 right now, so we don't have to address that. It automatically carries over. However, our advocacy committee representative is something that happens every year, a new person. I can tell you, I just want to take a point of personal privilege. As an executive officer in FSBA, I'm a member of every committee, and so I attend our advocacy committee, and I can tell you, Board Member Fields is our representative now of the committee, and she does a great job in the committee, so thank you for your service, truly. And so I do want to open it up for this discussion we will have another discussion on the next work session, and then we'll have it for a vote at the end of the month for our next year's representative. So starting July 1, 2026 to June 30, 2027. So board members, do I have any discussion on this? Mr. Keys, you're recognized.
I want to echo your sentiment, and Ms. Fields, she's done a great job on that, and I enjoy serving currently as the alternate for that, so just looking forward to continuing to support in any way that we can.
Thank you, Mr. Keys. Do any other members have any comments? Mrs. Fields, you are now recognized.
Thank you. I would just say that serving on the advocacy committee is very intense, and it takes great commitment, especially during the legislative session. It's like every Friday, there are legislative meetings, and lots of times it conflicts with things that we have here, and trying to balance all of that. So whoever chooses to do that, you just have to keep that in mind, that it is a great commitment to be able to do it. And I'm very thankful that sometimes when I'm not able to be there, Chair Sharpless is present. So I just want to make sure that whoever does that, they understand the commitment. Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Fields. Anyone else have any discussion on this? Seeing none, I would like to just say that our next work session, I would like to have an idea of who we are going to actually make the motion that night to fulfill this obligation. So please consider it, everyone, and make sure to come next work session with maybe a motion, not a motion, but a idea of who you might want there, so we can make the decision that night. Okay? If there's no other discussion on this item, we are now going down to board member comments. So I'm opening up. Do we have anyone have any liaison reports? Please signify by pushing your button for speaker list. Board Member Wyatt, you are now recognized.
Mine is less of a liaison report, but I just want to take a point of privilege. Today, we're doing the ribbon cutting for the SEU Winter Haven campus, which will have lots of dual enrollment opportunities. So you all should have received an invite, but would love to see you there if you're available.
Thank you, Board Member Wyatt. Does anyone else have any liaison reports? All right, seeing none, this work session of the Polk County School Board is adjourned.